Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 4 at Airventure and Oshkosh Live here inside the Redbird studio. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Randy. Good to be back with you again on the last day of our live stream here on day 4.
And we still have programming all day tomorrow, too. Those are going to be some program segments that we weren't able to fit into a very busy production schedule throughout the week. We're going to have a full program tomorrow, 8:30 to 12:30. Look forward to that. We've got a wonderful lineup of guests today, lots of guests today. Some of them were Editor's Choice Award winners, so we're excited to talk about that. We're going to have another guest here from Redbird, but tell us about what happened yesterday.
I had a great day 3, and I had some highlights I wanted to share with you. First off, I want to get a shout out to Ed Wishmeyer, a beloved figure with EAA. He gave me and Amy Wilder, the editor at Plane and Pilot, a true VIP golf cart tour.
Nice.
I started on day 1 having seen about 2% of the grounds, and I'm now at about 25% of seeing everything, which I think is a pretty awesome leap. But I wanted to make a suggestion, I thought, because there's so much to see and the grounds are so tremendous, so large. What about installing like a high-speed rail system, you know, like they have in Japan, like a train that can go 200 miles an hour? I think it could just get people quicker to the different parts of the property. I mean, God bless the John Deeres pulling people around on the trams, but what do you think? High-speed rail system, get everyone around? I mean, just...
It's a possibility. The trams are convenient, they're fast, but they don't fling people off either. So.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough. Also, got to meet an air traffic control crew earlier today, which was awesome. And I just asked them, what's the vibe, what's the energy like in the tower? One word, pumped, is what this fella said. It was a crew of 4, and he was just talking about how much chatter, how much conversation, as you well know, happening in the tower. They each had like a half-gallon iced coffee. So a lot of energy. They were very chatty, very upbeat, so that was really cool. And then speaking of Redbird, our sponsor here at Oshkosh Live, I tried out the simulator right behind us yesterday. Cool. So it was 3 non-pilots, myself, our producer Kaylee Nix, and Ryan Ewing, the editor of Airline Geeks. Non-pilots tried it out. And I will tell you, trying to land on an aircraft carrier with no training, practice, or education is impossible. Yeah, it's really difficult. I really struggled. I said goodbye to my family 3 different times during the simulation. Kaylee struggled as well. Ryan actually did land it on the aircraft carrier, but in full disclosure, he was an airline management major at Arizona University and had a Redbird simulator at his school. So I feel like that is an unfair advantage, and those results should be absolutely thrown out.
He had an advantage. He's an airport brat. I think he started his first lesson around 14.
Yeah.
So no harm.
Last night, of course, the night air show, awesome. We were together for that, was incredible. Anytime you can see a Coast Guard recreation or Rosie the Riveter recreated with hundreds of drones, it's spectacular. What was your impression of it?
Yeah, that's fabulous. The inclusion of drones is good. It's environmentally friendly, but it just adds a level of complexity and design that's really just incredible. Especially when the drones were up there, the fireworks were going, and the last performers were on. That's the only time you want to see flames coming out of an aircraft.
It was pretty incredible.
Cool. Yeah,
it was incredible. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out to my son Tanner, who turns 18 today.
Nice.
And I am excited. I'm going to be leaving this wonderful live stream, and I'm going to go home and buy him his first pack of cigarettes. So I'm looking forward to that fatherhood moment. We're going to share it together.
Cigarettes. Get him on a discovery flight, brother. Get him in the air.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to spend his time. But anyway, and it's been a wonderful week with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been a tremendous opportunity. Oshkosh Live has been a big success, and I want to thank all the awesome people at Redbird for hosting us. What a tremendous week it's been.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome, and thanks for joining me here. I can't imagine a better place to be if you're an aviator than Oshkosh, unless it's in the air. So yeah, we're on the ground, we're in the right spot anyway.
Indeed, indeed.
So you talked a little bit about simulators, and we've got our first guest here, Greg Roark from Redbird. So
good morning, Greg.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We have the same stylist. I don't know if we have a wide shot, but
same barber. Yeah, it's great to see a man with the proper haircut.
Thank you.
With the other guy, right?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, Greg, you're the director of K-12 education. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that's all about with the simulator company.
So what we do is that we integrate simulation within the aeronautics programming in school districts. So I work with school districts all across the country and developing aeronautics programming in their schools where they can do everything from experiential type of things through aviation with our simulators, all the way up to producing pilots with various levels of certification. We are able to move kids through various industry certifications through the FAA. We do a lot of work, more CTE, career tech ed,
okay.
where the goal here is to put kids on a pathway toward that JOB. We want kids out there thinking about what is it that they're going to do, you know, whether they're passionate about aviation, flying the airplane, whether it's going to be building the airplane, maintaining the airplane, air traffic control with the airplane. So a lot of different options here through aviation, and we try to expose them to that as early as possible.
Yeah, that's really wonderful, because I think when a lot of people think about working in aviation, they're thinking about flying careers. And just like the Air Force, you know, the bulk of the Air Force are not flying careers. There's so many other opportunities. If you love aviation, there's probably a job for you.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Greg, we were talking a little bit earlier, and it was just been wonderful. For those watching at home, the simulation, the seminar area is right next to us, right next to our stage. And what a joy it's been watching you work with these kids, teaching these kids. It's been awesome to see. So, I mean, tell me a little bit about just like the feeling of being a teacher, because there were some young ones answering some complex questions, and it was just really impressive. So,
It's the coolest part about what I get to do. I was a classroom teacher for a long time before I came to Redbird, and so it's that part that I truly miss. And so when I get this opportunity to work with kids and to be able to do this, it's so awesome. Because with kids, it's so many times I think that we sort of forget how kids learn. And when you get the tools and you create the opportunities for these kids and let them show you what's possible, it's humbling. And it really is. It's truly amazing.
it's amazing.
So it's experiential learning, right, with a simulator. So you have so many simulators. You've got everything from desktop on up to the full motion simulators behind us.
Right.
What is the experience for K through 12 students? You're not putting full motion simulators in there.
We actually do.
Nice.
Yeah, we actually do. We have school districts, including the last program that I was at in Colorado, where we had everything from the desktop units that you see in our sim lab here, all the way up to full motion simulators. And again, the idea is we start them young. We start these kids in the 4th grade on these simulators. And by 6th grade, I've got kids flying instrument approaches. Then we get them geared up for all of the high school classes, where again, they get in an advanced aviation training device, where again, those hours that they can earn in those logbooks with the experience that they get. So they get to where they can respond appropriately in the event of an emergency with this, in addition to all that experience that translates out there into the aircraft. When they get there in the flight deck, they've already been there. Mm-hmm. And so the lessons are far more efficient and points to the #1 word on my big board, which is safety. And so with that, these things are just completely, they're invaluable. I mean, they're so amazing.
Well, if you are a parent and you want, and you're watching this and you have a 4 or 5 year old, and like, what is the gateway? What would you recommend to begin that path?
I think one of the things, and it really truly depends, because there are so many different groups and so many different ways that students can be led toward this experience in aeronautics and specifically in aviation. So whether there's a program within their town, whether there is a school that is nearby, we have so many schools, those programs that are now becoming schools of choice, and they start putting in aeronautics programming in here, quite honestly, to lure those kids in, is to say, here's something that we offer that not many do, and here's that experience. So those experiences are out there. You do kind of have to look for them, and if you have trouble finding them, give me a call.
Okay,
that's what I was going to say, because every educator watching this is going on the Redbird site right now going, how do I get a full motion simulator at my school? So how do they do that?
Yeah, you give me a call and we talk. We talk about what's right for you. No program is the same. Every program is different. There's no one size fits all. So it's all about what's right for your school, for your stakeholders, for your communities, and then we can talk about the gear. The first thing that we want to talk about, however, is the education. What does success look like for you with your students? Where is it that you want them to go? What skills do you want them to have when they leave your hallowed halls?
Well, that's wonderful, and you mentioned success, and I think we have a success story all queued up to share, so great segue.
Oh, all right.
So I think if you had asked like 6-year-old Kat what she wanted to be doing, probably would have said astronaut. And that was where I was wanting to go for a long time. I mean, it's taken a different form, but I think that's really where, like the love of aviation, that kind of stuff came from. I started, in high school, and then as I went to college, a lot of what I wanted to do, like my professional life, or what I thought the direction was going to be, was kind of life sciences. So I studied biology, loved that kind of stuff. Aviation was almost just like this hobby on the side, as silly as that sounds, but I found a great community doing that, and so it was like the more time I spent with the community and around airplanes, airports, like kind of just immersing myself in a lot of those opportunities, I think the more is like, well, we'll just see how far this goes kind of thing. And it turned into like this really incredible opportunity I never thought I'd have in the Air Force. So really pleased about that. But yeah, it was a gradual process. I think I was lucky that I was able to pursue it mostly as a hobby and not necessarily consider it as like a big professional aspiration at the time. And it just, grew from there. It was a newer program, hadn't been established yet. I just heard that it had been pitched to the school district as this is something that we'd like to include as part of the STEM curriculum. And they were on board, which was incredible. The way the curriculum was structured was very much in line with what the FAA looks for as far as ratings. So it was great because it was like a classroom environment. You got to be there with your friends. And then the instructors they had were awesome to kind of instill that passion and excitement for just how cool like flying and aviation could be. But it was very much like, okay, one semester was FAA private pilot ground school kind of stuff. So really just starting from there, and then with the end goal being to go take that 50-question FAA exam at the end of it and pass at least the ground portion. And so a lot of the courses were structured that way. There was an instrument course very much along the same line. So kind of taking what the FAA requires of those things and what a flight school would really provide, and then bringing that into the high school curriculum, which was amazing. I went to the Air Force Academy, and so just kind of continued. I didn't think I wanted anything to do with the military, but was really lucky to have the opportunity and to pursue that and explore that career path. And then obviously give back in some form of service as well, which has been amazing. And so I went to the Air Force Academy and was just had continuing exposure to flying and what the Air Force does and their involvement there and all the different career paths that you could take that are involved with aviation. I think that's something that I learned early on was you don't just have to be a pilot to be involved in this kind of stuff. There are all kinds of ways to integrate the community and aviation and flying and to still play an active role there. I went on after graduating to combat systems officer training, which is in Pensacola, Florida. And then from there, now I'm in a weapons systems officer on the F-15E, the Strike Eagle variant. And that's been incredible. So it's like still being involved, not as a pilot, but like involved in the community and getting to go through training and then do all these really cool things from there. So this was a thank you note I sent to the first teacher I had that really was a mentorship in aviation for me. It was Mr. R is what we all called him, and he was the guy that came with a vision to the school district to start an aviation program at the high school, and then also encourage us to become part of it and provide us the resources and mentorship to continue pursuing those dreams. I said, "Dear Mr. R, I've been meaning to send this to you for a while now. Just over 2 years ago, when I accepted an appointment to the Air Force Academy, there were two things I knew. One, that I was agreeing to join the military, and two, more importantly, they had a flying team. There's a whole list of things I should have done more research on, including what basic training would be like and potential career choices down the road. But I focused most of my questions on learning about the flying team and how to get on it. It was a long 6-month tryout process, but now I find myself humbled to be one of the 9 cadets in my class to have had the opportunity to be in the most advanced airmanship program at USAFA. I'm sending you one of our team patches because it is the most sincere thank you I can possibly give. Without your enthusiasm, vision, and mentorship, I would not be able to wear that patch on my shoulder of my flight suit. Thanks to you, I will never forget the sky is a good place to start.
Wow, that really was a success
come on,
story.
Greg.
That was something that career
This gentleman right here could not even look at this monitor. And what an emotional and what a tremendous tribute to you, sir.
I couldn't hear the last part. I knew I'd cry. So
What a trajectory. I mean, you've changed a life, right? You've gone from the Redbird experience with STEM to Air Force Academy, F-15's weapon systems operator. It's something.
you know, and again, the thing that for me, the most humbling part about what I get to do is working with young people like Kat, because you have these people that come into your classroom and you know instantly there's something special. And when I took her on her first discovery flight, you could tell. You could just tell. And then just to kind of watch the progression with it, it's not the big bald man. It's the subject matter. It's the allure of what's next, of what's possible. And that's the thing that happens with students like Kat when they recognize that opportunity and what it means to them. And she's clearly taken advantage of that.
Wow, it's incredible.
That's wonderful. I think, you know, a lot of educators always speak about the difference they make in hearing, you know, from their students, you know, years later. And where is she stationed now? Do you know what her duty is?
Well, in fact, I can, but I can't say.
Oh, that. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's really pretty cool when you have some of your former students get into those positions where you can't talk about them. And so that's just like really cool. But she is clearly, you know, a rock star. But I will also say that other students that have gone through, there are more stories.
Oh, sure.
Similar to Katerina's, you know, my former figure skater,
Yeah.
who is now out there mopping it up in an F-15.
That's right. I give her a 10.
There it is.
Well, nice.
So Greg, for again, parents, interested parties, educators, what's the best way for the audience to find you and to find about what you do?
Yeah, if people have questions, especially if there are school districts that are interested in beginning programming like what we've discussed, or if there are parents that are looking to say, how can my student get involved in something, send me an email. You can send me an email. You can come to, you know, groark@redbirdflight.com, contact us, give us a call right there in Kyle, Texas. And send me an email or a voicemail, and I'll get back to you. We'll find a pathway here for a student. That student wants to do this. We'll make it happen.
Wonderful. I do have one last question. So, you know, for all the educators that are super excited about this and they want to get a simulator, maybe the school district doesn't have funding. Are there grants? Are there other ways to fund equipment like this?
There are. So a lot of school districts, through their CTE department, as you mentioned, there are grants that are available for schools for various needs. There's also local fundraising that can happen. For instance, all of the equipment that I had in my classroom at my last school in Colorado, we raised every penny. The school did not put in a penny for the actual equipment for all of that. We raised all of that locally. So there's a lot of different ways that they can go about doing this. And again, if they have questions, let me know.
All right. Greg, thanks for coming by. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for changing lives.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Be
meeting
well.
you.
Who's our next guest, Sean?
Well, let's look over here. If we want to pan over, right, who we got with us here today? Where are we here on our lineup, Randy?
Bose. So one of the Editor's Choice winners, we're fortunate to have an opportunity to give them a platform to speak. So Bose is a perennial favorite with all aviators. They, you know, A20 aviation headsets, now the A30 aviation headset. You know, you can change the boom around. It's really flexible and popular and just an incredible piece of technology. You know, if anybody's got a Bose wave radio at home, they know the technology that goes into that and how powerful and how special that is. Well, we've got somebody here sitting right next to you from Bose.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. And I think you said it very, very well. We have introduced the A30. We did it right around a year ago. And we were absolutely honored to have the award that we took home the other night for the innovation of that product. We thank you for that. There is a history of our company with making incredible sound and finding a way to also cancel out sound, which is the key thing with the A30 and our entire line of aviation products.
Okay.
It's very, very cool stuff.
Yeah, headsets are really cool, Mike. So I worked for Gulfstream for a while, and they have this hemianechoic chamber, and we hired a person on staff whose job was to keep sound out of the aircraft, right? You got this big jet engine right next to you in the cabin, and how do you keep that sound out? But he came from the submarine side of the business where his job was to keep sound in the submarine, so they could be detective. So it's interesting how you can manipulate technology to make you do what you want. So
yeah, and you know, no question about that. And you know, brief story of how we got here. Our founder, Dr. Bose, many years ago was on a transatlantic flight, and he was trying the latest technology that was part of the entertainment system on the flight. He put it in his ears, and he just was like, wow, there's too much noise. I can't hear anything. And he sat back and he decided to create an algorithm and a formula to really develop noise cancellation. Right. And here we are.
And what a great health benefit, right? So I don't know if you've ever been in an airplane and taken your headsets off and try to have a conversation. It's no wonder that so many aviators have hearing loss, because before headsets, I don't know how people did that and spoke into a mic and just try to carry on a conversation. Now, I think with noise-canceling headsets, that reduces fatigue. It helps with your alertness. What are some other benefits of a noise-canceling headset like the A30?
That's probably the largest thing. And when we came out with the A30, our primary design engineer of the A30 is a pilot himself. And his primary focus of the design of the A30 was to find ways to reduce that pilot fatigue. And we all know it's real. The FAA tells us it's real. You put something on your head for hours upon hours. Clamping force causes an issue. Right. The noise in the cabin obviously causes an issue. So create a headset that actually helps reduce that. Reduce the clamping force, cancel out the noise, so that you can be more relaxed and more focused on what's most important, and that's what's in front of you. Mm-hmm. And that's key.
Okay. So obviously, as we mentioned, an Editor's Choice winner. Can you tell us a little bit about getting that news? How did that word get to you, and how was the reaction from the team when you found out that you'd gotten the award?
Well, first of all, complete pride. It's been a year-long, I'll say, an adventure for us as we're launching the A30, and rewind. We had the A20 in the market for many years, and it's been a bit of an icon in the business. And when we launched the A30, the fact that we were recognized with an editor's award from a magazine as prestigious as Flying, huge. Couldn't be more excited about it. When I first heard about it, I jumped in the air and clicked my heels together. Yeah. I literally did.
Mary Poppins style. There you go. That's what I was looking for. That's
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. Don't tell my wife. She says, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nah, don't worry about it." But and the team is very excited about it, and we're proud of it. And we're actually in our tent that we have here. We've been talking about it nonstop to all the customers and the pilots and the aviators that have been coming in.
Okay.
The fact that you recognize it and believe in it as well means a lot to us.
Well, the A30, it's worth every penny, but are there any show specials for the aviators that are here?
Yeah, it's a fair question. What we're doing with the A30, the benefit of being Bose, we're not just an aviation company, we do a lot more. So we are providing a gift with purchase at our booth. So if you stop by our booth and buy an A30 or even the Pro Flight, which is our in-ear version, we're giving you a free Bluetooth speaker as a thank you here at the show.
Oh, wow.
So it's the SoundLink Micro, great little speaker. It's perfect. Plop it on your backpack and take it wherever you want to go.
That's cool. And where are you?
We are located right on the main flight line. We're not too far from the extremely large B-52 bomber.
Okay.
If you go there and you walk down the main line, we're right on the left-hand side.
So I know exactly what I'm going to do later today. I'm going to watch the air show from your booth and put on some noise-canceling headsets.
You could do that. We'll do that. And, the other thing too that we have, not only do we have, and we're selling A30, we're selling the Pro Flight, but we also have a selection of our consumer audio as well. We get a lot of people that come into our booth that tells us, well, I'm a Bose fan. I've been a Bose fan for a long time. What do you have new that's out there that I can use in my home? I can use wherever. And we have some consumer audio, and we're doing demos on that as well.
So what is that? So I have a wave radio. What has there been another iteration, another generation since then?
Yeah, there has. We have a Bluetooth speaker that we have on the at the show called the SoundLink Flex, which is an amazing speaker. We have a couple of our noise canceling around ear headphones. We also have an in-ear headphone that does noise cancellation. And then last but not least, a brand new product that we introduced that is an open earbud. And you have to hear it to believe it. It's very, very cool. We have that, and we're doing demos there too.
Open earbud.
So I have to ask, does Bose have anything to do with the yodeler audio here at the show? For those watching at home, at 7 a.m., a yodel is projected across the grounds, and it's not the crispest audio, so I didn't know if Bose would have been involved, or is there a chance for perhaps Bose to improve that audio experience?
Perhaps in the future we can maybe step in and
Just a
help it out.
suggestion,
Yeah. It is a beautiful yodel, I have to say that, but I think we can make it sound better.
I would agree.
Do you have a yodel? Are you a closet yodeler?
Am I a classic yodeler? No, I'm not classic.
Just when he wins awards. I think there's heel clicking and yodeling.
Yeah, you should have seen him on stage.
Yeah, I'm more of a new age yodeler. It's very different sounding.
You want to share?
No.
We'll turn the cameras off.
Yeah.
Leave the audio on.
No.
All right, wonderful. What else do we need to know about Bose before we let you go, Mike?
Well, I'll tell you the last thing, and you mentioned this, and I would be remiss not to talk about it. We have seen in our booth this week so many young aviators come, and it's encouraging to see that. And somebody comes up, talks to us. I'm a young student. I'm just starting out, and one of our large focuses is to begin to educate a lot of our young aviators, our student pilots, and whatnot, around the importance of active noise cancellation. We've heard time and time again I'm taking my first flights and I have a non-noise canceling headset. It's all passive, and we bring them in and we talk about the benefits of active. And it's so very important to us. And you mentioned this earlier about hearing loss. We're taking a huge focus in protecting our young aviators. Start out with a really, really good active noise canceling headset, and you'll never go back to anything else, because we want to protect those hearings. We don't want any hearing loss out of one ear, both ear, and we're going to do our part, and we're educating them as best we can. So come by, we'll educate you. If you're a young student starting out, we'll let you know why you would want an A&R. We're hoping it's Bose, but it can be anything that's an A&R. We want to protect their hearing.
Okay, great.
Well, it's Mike Dodge with Bose, 2024 Flying Editor's Choice winner. Congratulations on the success, awesome products, and thank you so much for joining us today on Oshkosh Live.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
So, interesting little segue. We're talking about headsets. We've got another one of our segments from the EAA Aviation Museum on the Spirit of St. Louis display, and you're going to find an interesting Charles Lindbergh artifact that's on loan from Flying Magazine.
Hello, I'm Chris Henry, the EAA Aviation Museum Manager, and this is the Spirit of St. Louis exhibit. This exhibit features a recreation of the actual Spirit of St. Louis that Charles Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic. Although the original is hanging in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., our recreation is based on a real Ryan aircraft. Paul Poberezny had the bones of a real Ryan mailplane and had it modified to be a Spirit of St. Louis replica. This aircraft was actually flown to recreate the stateside tour of 48 states that Charles Lindbergh actually did after the crossing. Along the way, people brought out artifacts and memorabilia and donated it to us that were there on the first time Lindbergh came through. Those artifacts have been archived here in our collection, and the aircraft was then packaged up and shipped to Paris, where it recreated some flying around Paris as well. The airplane is suspended above a replica of the city of Paris, built by the Boy Scouts out of Legos. And one of the real special artifacts in this exhibit is a helmet. And the helmet is very special. It's on loan to us from Flying Magazine. Luckily, a few employees from Flying were at an auction where this helmet was auctioned off. They bought it and put it on loan here today. Why this helmet is so special is when Charles Lindbergh landed in Paris, it was kind of a frenzy. People were going crazy. They were celebrating. They were ripping pieces off of the Spirit of St. Louis. And they actually took his helmet off of him, his leather flying cap, and threw it into the crowd. And that helmet was never seen again. This helmet was given to him as a gift for his flights around Paris. He took them with him as well on that 48-state tour. And as he would meet famous aviators such as Amelia Earhart, he had them sign his helmet. Thanks to Flying Magazine, this helmet is here and preserved for all to see.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that video as much as we did. We had a lot of fun making the video.
Beautiful. It's been a great day. I gotta tell you, the weather has just been spectacular this week. Oshkosh Live, powered by Redbird. It's just been a spectacular week, and obviously having great guests today. A lot of guests today.
Yeah. So
very exciting.
But we've got another interesting guest here. So Michael Leake from Simulation is here inside the Redbird studio. He's got some work here we're going to talk about. So one of the challenges in aviation is not everybody can get out to the airport to just take a discovery flight, to sit in the simulator. There's access issues. There's not an airport in every town. So the way to get people exposed to aviation is take the product to the people. And Michael, that's kind of what you're doing with the mobile unit, right?
It is. So our goal is to leverage simulators to create a better, more well-prepared learner for whatever phase of flight training they're in.
All right. Starting from zero time, they're just thinking about, haven't even had a discovery flight yet.
No, not yet. I've actually had more people, individuals, reach out than I anticipated. A lot of instrument students that want me to send the rig to them. They want to do a intensive instrument training before they go into the airplane. Okay. So that's been surprising to me. I think my target is a smaller flight school that maybe can't make the large investment for one of the higher level simulators. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've been really interested by how many individuals have been inquiring.
So do people reach out and say, come visit us, or are you taking the show on the road and stopping at every flight school you can find?
Yeah, so my goal is to scale. So I want to build 20 units over the next 18 months. So for me, the way that I structured it is that the sim in the rig, even delivered, costs what it costs at any flight school, maybe even less. So my goal is to have the demand drive the location. Since Sun and Fun that we launched, we moved the sim 11,000 miles. So it's been pretty exciting. We went to Bozeman. We've been in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And so there's no infrastructure required for the sim, and that's also another challenge for smaller flight schools, having the space, having the capital to commit, and then really having the instructors to deliver training in that. So all of our instruction is done remotely, and typically it's from professional pilots who aren't really motivated by the flight time. Their motivation is to drive learning and create better learners.
Okay. Well, we don't have a shot of it, so tell us a little bit about the rig. Is it a full motion simulator? Is it in a semi?
It is. So it's almost the size of a semi. It's a toy hauler, and so the simulator gets mounted in the garage area, and then that's it. That is it. So and then the bedroom's converted into a briefing room. So the learner would go in. They would get a video brief. The instructor gets a condensed version of that video brief, so everyone's on the same page. And then the instructor can run the sim remotely from anywhere in the world.
Okay. Are you going to try another carrier landing?
I think I absolutely have to. But I wanted to go back, if you could tell us a little bit. I'd love to know, like, the seed of the idea. Like, you're sitting there, you see a need, and you think you want to fill it. Like, where does this whole business, this whole idea go back to?
Yeah, so I've spent the last 10 years in Part 142 training, so training professional pilots in large simulators. And the thing that many people don't understand is that when professional pilots are trained, they're trained solely in simulators, and then the first time they fly the airplane, there are probably people in the back. And it's very unlike what we do in the primary training space. So I think that we can build a much better base of proficiency in pilots so that when they get in the airplane with an overwhelmingly inexperienced flight instructor, that it makes both people less frustrated, right? The CFI gets a better student to work with, and the student's frustration is lower. So it was really my experience in professional training.
Yeah, and I understand this is is this Simulation's like debut, like here?
So
exclusive.
Effectively, yes. Yes.
And how's the response been? On the ground?
It's been very good. We've moved it around a lot over the last couple weeks. People are really excited. The thing that I think people are surprised about, they look at me and they're like, it's a really simple concept. And so for me, that's a win. That's really what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be a very abstract thing to sell or to message.
Some of the best ideas are the simplest ones.
And where's the best place for all of our wonderful viewers to find you and check out the product and check out what you're doing?
So simuvation.com, you can actually book it similar to you're booking a 172 at your local flight school.
Can we also book a rental car?
No,
not like
no rental cars.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Michael, thanks for coming by. That's
Thank
great
you.
stuff. We love what you're doing.
Congratulations.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for being part of this. Great. All right, so we've had another special guest show up with us, and one of the things that pilots, very compassionate pilots, like to do is combine their desire to give back to a community. You heard that in Kat's story too. So one way to combine the passion of aviation with community service is it's public benefit flying. There's lots of ways to do it. There's pilots in pause, there's flying physicians, there's all sorts of things to do. But Civil Air Patrol is very, very interesting because you can join Civil Air Patrol at 12 years old. You can be in it through your entire life. There's no retirement age. It's a volunteer organization, nearly 70,000 volunteers, and like a lot of things, a small percentage of that are the pilots. So again, Civil Air Patrol, there's a job. If you want to join, there's something for anybody to do. But we're going to talk a little bit about something that every pilot needs to know about how Civil Air Patrol can help save your life when you're having your absolute worst day. Through some unexpected technology that I suspect you haven't heard about, but it may save your life. So let's welcome Brigadier General Regina A. So she is a one-star general, soon to be a two-star general at Civil Air Patrol in just a couple weeks. Congratulations, General.
Thank you, Randy.
So, Sean Bean, have you ever met anybody from Civil Air Patrol before?
Absolutely not. This is
you're right at the top. Yeah.
Right at the top.
Wow, that's impressive.
VIP, wonderful.
So thanks for joining us today. Full disclosure, I know a little bit about Civil Air Patrol, but I know that a lot of people out there don't. And like I said, this is super, super important. So as aviators, we know that every aircraft is required to have an ELT. So it's, sends out a signal in the blind, based on G-force impact. It can be hard to find somebody, right? So it just sends out a signal, and maybe the launch of a search can't start until better weather or daylight, and you have to start flying around in this grid pattern and start to home in on where the crash site might be. Every minute is critical, right? So the time to find can save your life. Civil Air Patrol has got a pretty interesting technology using cell phones. What can you tell us about cell phone technology?
Yeah, so we have a cell and radar forensics units that help look for missing pilots, missing aircraft, missing hikers, maybe an elderly person who wandered away who has dementia or something like that. If you have a cell phone and it can hit the tower, if you're not in airplane mode, we can maybe find you. So we use the data from all the different towers, and we have some proprietary software that we put that into that helps us get a very accurate location as to where that individual might be.
So you just mentioned something that's critical. A lot of us, you get in your airplane, you're used to flying commercially, and you have to put your phone in airplane mode. You don't want to do that. You want to keep your phone turned on all the time, right?
That's correct. If your phone's in airplane mode, we can't get that data. If your phone is not in airplane mode, we can use Find My Device, we can use Find Me from Apple, and we can use all that cell data from different carriers to hone in on where you might be and to get you help much more quickly.
Okay. And so, again, you're having your worst day, plane ends up on the ground, not where you expected it to be. Who do you call?
Yeah, so you definitely don't want to make a first call to your family. A lot of people think, I'm in a bad situation, I want to talk to my family first. That first call really needs to go to 911 so that we can get that information into the system and we can begin to track you. After you've made that call to 911, then it's okay to call your family. What we're going to do is we're going to send you a link that's done through that proprietary software where we can communicate with you through text messaging, and that will help the teams hone in on your position and find you more quickly to get that help you desperately need on that really bad day you're having.
Yeah. Well, that's also interesting too, because if you send someone a text message, if they respond, all right, they're survivors, we really need to get there fast, right? So what other information do you get in that first exchange, or do you continue to communicate with the pilots until you find them, let them know help's on the way?
Yeah, we hope to continue to communicate with the pilot throughout the process. Now, we know sometimes you may not have charged your battery. We would, of course, recommend that you always fly with that cell phone fully charged. And if you're having a bad day, make sure you take it off of airplane mode so that you can send us that information. But yeah, we'll take that. We'll continue to triangulate where your position's at. It's not a perfect science, but we have some really great technology that helps us get very close. But the more we can stay in contact with you, the better job we can do helping.
Okay. Well, let me just share an experience that I know. And this happened a couple years ago out in the Pacific Northwest, and General A mentioned hikers, and there happened to be a gentleman out hiking. In the wintertime it gets dark early. Now he's lost. It's dark. He fell into the Hoh River. Now he's hypothermic, and they couldn't find him. And somebody had the idea, well, let's call his cell phone company and see if we can track him down. And they came up with about a 9-mile radius. So trying to find somebody in the mountains in a 9-mile radius at night, they were never going to get there before he succumbed to hypothermia. So then Civil Air Patrol got involved, and just within a matter of minutes, they were able to communicate and transfer GPS coordinates to a Coast Guard helicopter, drop the line without even knowing where the individual was. And it was within about 12 meters, and they literally saved that life that day.
Absolutely. And we'll have, 60 or so saves last year where we were able to help people who are having that bad day, where we were able to help authorities get the right location for that individual. So we're always out there looking to be able to serve our communities and to save lives.
Okay, and And I think sometimes when you tell people you're going to find them, locate a person by their cell phone, maybe they're thinking NCIS, and they can track somebody to it doesn't work. It's not Hollywood style, right? There's a lot of technology that goes into it. There's also, you mentioned radar analysis. What piece is that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of technology, and we absolutely can't track your cell phone. That's not what we do. We locate your cell phone when you're having trouble. There has to be a very good reason for us to be able to request that data from the cell company. You have to have your life in danger, or you have to be where you may be injured seriously, and that's when we can request that through a mission. We also have a radar forensics team, and they've been able to use radar tracking to also help locate the sites of crashes.
Yeah. Another interesting story there, too. There was a crew, there was a family flying from, I believe it was Cessna 210 from the Bahamas back to the States. Engine quit, went down, trying to find an aircraft in the ocean. That's literally needle in a haystack. Here again, radar analysis said, send a Coast Guard cutter right there.
And we were close, just as you said.
Yeah.
We helped them find the location.
I mean, this is life-changing stuff.
It is.
How many saves last year, you said?
60.
Okay, and I'll bet they weren't all pilots, right? There's hikers and dementia patients that wander off.
That's right.
And, yeah. I remember there was one in Bend, Oregon. There's a hiker that fell, a few feet and broke his pelvis. He's stuck there on the side of the mountain, but gave you a call.
That's right, and we were able to get that information for that location to the authorities. They can get there quickly, and they can save that life.
Okay. So for aviators out there, this is a great public benefit flying opportunity, right? So we always, and for flight instructors too, right? Because Civil Air Patrol has this cadre of aviators, and they also need to stay current. We also have new pilots coming on because you have a program called Cadet Wings where they train students to become private pilots.
Oh, wow.
What can you tell us about that? His son just turned 18, so.
Oh, excellent.
Could be good for you, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, so our cadets get a series of orientation flights to kind of wet their whistle, to get them interested in flight. After that, we have flight academies where they can get to a solo, and then we have Cadet Wings, and that will help them get to their private pilot's license. And so it's jointly funded through the Air Force and the Ray Foundation. We're very grateful for their support, and we've been able to train over 340 cadet pilots to that professional pilot's license.
No kidding. Wow, that's a great connection with the Air Force.
Well, I want to ask, with your level of expertise and experience here at AirVenture, like, what aircraft do you love seeing? What is your favorite part of the show? Can you say?
Oh,
Can you pick a
absolutely.
favorite child?
So, well, it's hard, but we all have a favorite, right? So I guess it would be the B-29. And I think Doc might be here out of Kansas. So I had an uncle that I'm named for who was actually in the Army Air Corps and then the Air Force. He retired.
Wow.
And he was a crew chief on B-29. So it always has a special place in my heart. When I see that B-29, I think about my uncle and the wonderful time we had together, and that Air Force story that he shared with me and how he helped me when I was a Civil Air Patrol cadet.
You were a Civil Air Patrol cadet. What age did you get started?
So I joined Civil Air Patrol a little later. I didn't hear about it when I was 12. I joined when I was 17. And I was still able to get through the cadet program, learn a lot about leadership, and learn skills that really helped me throughout my life to be successful. I certainly would not be where I am today without the great skills I learned in Civil Air Patrol. And that's why I give back now. I want to make sure that future cadets have that same opportunity that I had. And honestly, that opportunity gets better every day with our programs.
That's impressive. So you started with no rank at all, and within a couple weeks, you're going to have Civil Air Patrol's highest rank as 2-star general, Major General.
Yes, it's humbling to think that I came from that. And it's also absolutely inspiring to talk to our cadets and to let them know that they could be the national commander for Civil Air Patrol in 30 years.
Yeah. So just to mention people a little bit about Civil Air Patrol. So it's kind of two organizations in one. So Civil Air Patrol is the Air Force Auxiliary, and there's really 4 partners in the Air Force Auxiliary, right? There's active duty, there's Guard, there's Reserve, and there's the Air Force Auxiliary. The one catch being the Air Force Auxiliary, completely volunteer run. So when she mentioned the Cadet Wings is sponsored by the Air Force, there's no obligation. You don't have to join the Air Force if they teach you to fly, right?
Absolutely. Some of our cadets want to go into STEM career fields. Other cadets are interested in emergency services or emergency management, and some cadets have an interest in the military. That's one of the great things about Civil Air Patrol is we can help young people find their passion, find what it is they love to do, and then go on to that career path. So our career exploration opportunities are outstanding.
And I've got a deal for you.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so one of the beautiful things about Civil Air Patrol, it's something the whole family can do, right? So your son can join as a cadet, you can serve as an adult member, you can have a shared experience, but the cadets are in their own unit, the adults are doing their own thing. They usually meet the same night so you can travel together, but you have this great shared experience with your children, and often, The children will get the adults in because they're driving them there. They're sitting in the cars. I might as well go in and join. And long after the kid has gone off to college or career, parents are still involved because it's a social thing too, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful.
It's a passion. It's in your heart after a while, and you just want to keep doing it. You want to keep helping.
And where are you located here on the field?
So we're over in the education area.
Okay. You have a pretty interesting aircraft over there too. It looks like, I've heard people walk up to it and go, it looks like a baby Caravan. What is that?
Yeah, it's a GA8. It's a Gippsland aircraft. It's Australian made. It's one that we can use to carry equipment or more personnel. We use it sometimes for orientation rides for a group of cadets or aerial photography training. We do a lot of missions for FEMA, taking photos after disasters, so that we can help get checks to people who need them more quickly by analyzing that imagery and providing imagery for FEMA.
Okay. Well, just as we wrap up, you mentioned missions a little bit. What are some of the diversity of missions that Civil Air Patrol pilots might get to fly?
Yeah, so we have different missions in every state. It really varies. So, in some states it might be helping track wildlife herds. It might be fire watch. It could be low-level route surveys for the military. It could be air intercept training, where we help Air Force pilots learn how to intercept a civilian aircraft that airs into controlled airspace. It could be training other military personnel flying those photo missions or any number of things. We're very flexible. We have 540 aircraft nationwide and 1,400 units. So we're able to use those to do a variety of missions for community, state, and nation.
Yep. Something for everybody at Civil Air Patrol, even for those who have to rotate out or retire from the military. It's a great way to stay in uniform and continue to serve. So thank you again for spending some time with us, General. Congratulations on your upcoming promotion. So interesting fun fact about Civil Air Patrol, the two-star general, Major General, it's the highest rank. She will be the national commander and the CEO, and it's an all-volunteer position. So she's got a full-time job as an educator, and she does this on top of that. That's a lot of work and a lot of dedication. Thank you for that.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Right,
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to segue into a new video. This is one we kind of teased the other day, but over at the EAA Museum, there's a restoration hangar. It's named after Kermit Weeks, a pretty phenomenal aviator and collector in his own right. So let's see what goes on behind the scenes at the restoration hangar.
Let's roll it.
Hi, I'm Dick Lipinski. I'm Director of Communications here at EAA. And right now we're in the Kermit Weeks Flight Research Center, commonly known as the Weeks Hangar. This is not a public part of the EAA facilities, but it is a place where a lot of action happens. Everything from repair to restoration takes place in here with our technicians who have IAs and A&P certificates, and they do a marvelous job and get to work on so many different types of airplanes from around the world that come here, and of course those that go on display in the museum and those that fly regularly, including our tri-motor, our B-25, and others. And most people know about the Burt Rutan airplanes, the Long Easy, the Very Easy, of course, going up to Spaceship One and everything in between, the Starship. Well, there's some lesser known ones too that are in the EAA collection, and one of them is right here, the Grizzly, or known as the Grizz. It's from right around 1980. And it was a unique design. Burt Rutan always had some very interesting designs. Well, this is one of them. It's one of a kind. It's in the EA collection. And as you look at this aircraft, you'll see some interesting things in the landing gear and the wing configuration and so forth. Some of the ideas that sprouted from the fertile mind of Burt Rutan in his design factory. So this is one that we have on display during AirVenture outdoors, and also from time to time in the museum as we rotate different aircraft through there. So it's just one of about 200 airplanes in the collection. We're getting it all shined up and ready for AirVenture. We're standing in front of EAA's B-25 Mitchell bomber now. We've had this airplane in the collection for 4 decades. It was flown by Paul Poberezny quite a bit, but then it was on display in the museum for a long time. About 5-6 years ago, we decided, let's restore it. And it's painted in the colors of Berlin Express because that is the airplane it portrayed in the 1970 movie Catch-22. So this airplane actually is a movie star, has been in Hollywood productions. We take it throughout the Midwest and throughout the country on tour right now. So if it comes to your hometown, be sure to get a flight in it. It's loud, it's noisy, it's everything, but it's really, really cool. And during AirVenture, we also offer flights in it. And so you can sign up here at AirVenture, or before you get to Oshkosh, book yourself a flight in the B-25 and get that once-in-a-lifetime experience when you're here at Oshkosh.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that video. We've got more videos on tap for you tomorrow, but before we do another thing, that was Dick Napinski in that video, and a huge shout out to Dick Napinski and EAA, and also Chris Henry, the museum manager. We called them up at the last minute and said, hey, we want to show some people that are at AirVenture what they might be missing and what they need to see in the museum, and they made it happen. They said, we want to send the film crew up, we're going to spend a day with you, and he just cleared the decks, you know, just before Oshkosh. Dick's a pretty busy guy all the time, but before Oshkosh, imagine how much his phone blows up. He made it happen.
That's awesome. It's day 4, Oshkosh Live, powered by Redbird. It's been an amazing week. Randy, you've just been tremendous co-host, been learning so much from you.
It's been lots of fun.
And I want to make sure I recommend to everybody, you know, we obviously have multiple days of the live stream. There are so many great prepackaged stories and videos you should go back and find. The Poberezny estate piece we aired yesterday is tremendous. The Plane of the Day videos, which have been produced by Mark Phelps and John Whittle. As you know better than, certainly better than me, you know, every plane is a story, and hearing these, you know, hearing these individuals talking about their planes has just been compelling and moving and exciting. So make sure you go back and watch all the great pre-produced stuff that's been going on this week. And I think that's a great segue as we're here again, as we come in for landing here on day 4, right? That was good.
That's good. Not a carrier landing, though. You stay away from that.
We obviously want to introduce the powerhouse who's really been the engine behind this program. Kaylee Nix has been the producer here all week and just been crushing it, and wanted to bring on a little bit of behind the scenes because I'd imagine that she was asked, like, hey, what do you think about, for the first time ever, doing a live stream in a remote location at the busiest airspace in the world for a week, where engine noise is blasting behind you like that?
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Everything.
So, Kaylee,
Everything.
thank you for an amazing week. And also, I'd love to hear your perspective when you first heard about this idea, what was going through your mind?
So when the Redbird team brought us the idea, my first thought was like, I have no idea how to make this happen, but I have to make this happen, so yes, we're going to make this happen. And from then on, it was just like, okay, you know, it's kind of like a flight plan, right? Or where you lay it out,
get a briefing.
You break it into bite-sized chunks, and once you do that, you realize that it's really not terribly difficult to accomplish if you do it one piece at a time. And that's kind of what we did here. The collaboration effort is what brought it home. And I've heard you mention our editors, our talented editors so much, but our editorial talent from every one of these brands that's up here, from AvWeb to Airline Geeks to Aviation Consumer to Plane and Pilot to Flying Mag to Kit Planes, those 6 editors not only produced video content for the last kind of 4 months about this, they're still putting out magazines, they're writing web articles, they're here doing their job and also doing the extra job. So I have to give a gigantic shout out to them.
Yeah.
Amy Wilder, Larry Inglesano, Ryan Ewing, Russ Niles, and Mark Cook. Thank you guys so much for helping us make this crazy dream a reality.
Yes.
Because it would not have happened without them.
And you did this all in 4 months, is that what I heard?
Yeah, so Redbird came to us 4-ish. It was like the end of February when they started kicking around the idea, and then the middle of March where we were like, oh, we can get serious about this. So I think 4 months from like true inception and decision that this was happening to what you see out here.
And you were still working on the ultimate issue during that time too, right?
All our editing team was working on the ultimate issue.
Amazing.
Editing
What a
team was
team.
working on the ultimate issue.
So,
I'm on the video side, a million other places, but
besides being in the simulator, crashing into San Diego Bay,
we're not going to talk about it.
When was it probably your highest, I don't want to say stress, but what was your peak moment of thinking like, I have so much carrying this week? Like, was it before day 1, the morning of? Like,
Oh
when?
yeah,
Right now.
honestly, no.
Right now.
Sunday morning, getting here and seeing this space for the first time, realizing how great the studio space was, which is just an absolute testament again to our back of house production crew, who just never ever gets enough credit. The people who are pushing the buttons and running the cameras deserve all the credit in the world. So thank you guys for that one. But getting here and seeing the setup for the first time, and then honestly, just making sure that the live stream capabilities were functional. As soon as that happened, I was like, we're easy coasting for the rest of the week.
And I got to give a shout out, if we can get a wide shot, the awesome people at Redbird. We were deciding on this idea, and we wanted to have a college game day vibe.
Yeah.
They went out
They
and got
delivered.
the college game day people to create this amazing desk And, you know, I feel like Lee Corso sitting here. I want to put on a giant mascot head.
You need a giant Redbird.
You need a
head.
I need a Redbird is what I need.
You got to be a cheesehead. We're in Wisconsin.
But anyway, they put together this incredible set. It's just beautiful, and it's been so much fun. So
Yeah, so Randy, I know that technically I'm your subject right now, but I got to know, because you joined the flying team as our editor-in-chief of Flying Magazine less than 2 months ago. And you, again, we threw you into this project, and you have been phenomenal getting up here, natural on stage with us. And
Absolutely.
you are genuinely bringing very much a proud, just like, I feel like a proud mama right now of my show, right? You are delivering us here on the stage.
Absolutely.
How do you feel being now that flying is your flagship brand, you are leading it into success? How do you feel about all this?
It's amazing. One, just to have the opportunity of being flying is a bucket list opportunity for me. And I've had some really wonderful career opportunities in this industry over the last 25 years. But, you know, for the opportunity to have my name on the masthead of the industry's premier aviation publication, we're going to be 100 years old in 2027. And to be part of this team and to come in before the Ultimate Issue and to come in before the first Oshkosh Live, I couldn't have asked for anything more.
So I wanted to ask you this all week, but we've been so busy talking to other awesome people. Like, where does your aviation story begin? We've been asking that of all the guests, but when did the spark first start for you?
I was 6 years old, lived in College Park, Maryland, inside the Beltway. And, you know, every time planes went by, I looked up like most aviators do. And my parents took me over to the College Park Airport at 6 years old and had a discovery flight, and I was hooked ever since then. And my dream had been to be a naval aviator. That didn't work out. My dad had 6 degrees, and he said, you can do what you want with your life, go to college for 1 year and see what it's like. So the first thing I realized in college in the late 1970s, 1980s is, at that time there was a lot more women in college than on an aircraft carrier. And I said, oh, he's on
college it is. College it is.
College, yeah. So, but, you know, your life takes twists and turns, and my career went into superbike racing, and it wasn't until I wrapped up my career there I said, I need to start flying. I need to start today. Walked into a flight school. It was in the middle of winter in Rochester, New York, and it was a blizzard, and I said, I want to start flying. I want to start today. And they said, you know, it's snowing outside.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
It's amazing.
Getting ready to celebrate 100 years of Flying Magazine.
Yep.
And it's been an incredible week again with you, Randy, and with you, Kaylee.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
But don't forget, there's more content to come. More content coming down the pipe here on our last day, Oshkosh Live, powered by Redbird. Stay with us.
Bye, everybody.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Get. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Next.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Trashed.
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Hundreds of majors, an amazing campus, faculty mentors. You can find what you're looking for at Middle Tennessee State, the University of Opportunities. We do it all.
Welcome to another edition of Aviation Consumer Live, part of the Fire Crowns Oshkosh Live series here at Airventure 2024 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, of course. And I'm here with a couple of cool guys, probably the coolest guys in the room right now, Dr. Dan Monwax and Dr. Keith Roxo. And these guys started Wingman Med, which is an aeromedical consulting company that's doing some real good in the aeromedical community. And you know, you guys have got a really interesting story, a really interesting perspective when it comes to aeromedical certification. How you guys started this this business, and where you come from, and what you bring to the general aviation community. Doc Keith, let's start with you. Take it from the beginning. How did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so we both started off as F-18 pilots in the Navy. Dan and I actually went to flight school together. We did almost all of flight school together, F-18 training together. And then we kind of went separate ways for a little while in different squadrons. And then Dan ended up going to medical school, and I stole that idea. I thought it seemed like a really good idea, so I followed him to medical school. And we both became flight surgeons in the Navy. So we have the perspective of being a professional pilot and being concerned about reporting things to the medical, establishment, because your job and your livelihood kind of depend on your medical certification status, both in the military and outside. And as professional flight surgeons, then what we noticed is pilots tended to trust us a little bit more because of our background in aviation itself, and the fact that we were still flying as pilots in the military while being doctors in the military. And then over time, we both ended up getting our FAA qualification, and we were helping a lot of the reservists who are working on our base, but also airline pilots. We were helping them through issues for the FAA. And then word just kind of started to spread around and started getting non-military folks asking us for help. And that's when we kind of put it together and decided, well, maybe we should make a business of this. And that would be what we would do when we were all done with our time in the military.
And an important part of this is not only are you Top Gun guys, but you're also airplane owners, active GA pilots, right? What do you guys fly now?
So right now, we actually flew to Oshkosh here in our new to us 1965 S-35. One bit of correction though, I am not actually a Top Gun pilot. When it comes to, we both flew F-18s together, but I actually ended up going to be an FRS instructor, and so I brag about my combat experience where Keith gets the Top Gun credential. But yeah, so F-18s. I also flew the Citation for a period of time in the Navy after I went to med school as a pilot physician, and spent a brief amount of time as a T-45 instructor pilot, and then I've been flying recently a lot more in the GA community. So we have an A36 that we own and operate, along with an S35 that are both fantastic airplanes. I also do some flying with an outfit called San Diego Sky Tours, which does scenic tours of San Diego and aerobatics flights in Great Lakes biplanes, sport biplanes, and so really, any time I can get away and get into any kind of airplane, that's how I like to spend my time.
Yeah, so you guys being immersed in the general aviation community as active pilots and as active AMEs, how has the aeromedical certification climate changed over the years?
Well, in the last several years in particular, they've made a lot of strides on trying to let the AME themselves make the decision on things. So they've created a lot of disposition tables. They've increased the number of conditions AMEs can issue, known as the CACI protocols. So they've done a lot of those things. And in particular, just in the last year and a half, they've simplified some of the neurology requirements. The ADHD fast track came out about a year ago. And then most recently was some updated guidelines on mental health and your ability to get issued at the exam with a history of some mental health issues.
You and I have spoken about this before, and I've always made the statement that if you're not at least a little bit apprehensive about going for that FAA medical exam, you're probably doing it the wrong way. And, you guys are on the front lines. What mistakes do you see pilots making before they go to that dreaded visit to get the FAA medical? Young pilots, old pilots, and everybody in between. How are folks not doing this the right way?
Well, I think the biggest thing if you're scheduling an AME appointment and you've never stopped to ask yourself what would happen if you don't leave the AME's office with a certificate in your hand, that's a problem, and you need to kind of resolve that for yourself before you head in there. Because I think for many pilots, and this is particularly true for, for young pilots who have had a series of, have been young and healthy and take that for granted, you just assume that you're going to go in and get your certificate, and that if something goes wrong, that AME is going to be able to help you through the process. The reality is the AME's job is really only to evaluate you as you sit there in front of them, hand you a certificate if you qualify for one, and then defer that application to the FAA for further consideration if you don't. And once that deferral happens, it usually takes a minimum of 3 to 6 months, often often a lot longer, and that really boils down to how you've prepared for it. So one of the things that we tell all pilots is you should prepare for your FAA medical exam as though it's a check ride and that your career depends on it, because it really does. You're going in there and getting recertified every 6 months to every 60 months, depending on your age and classification of certificate. And if you don't pass that, you may be not flying for the next period of time. Whereas and so understanding that process and knowing what to do if you have a new medical condition, the time to get those questions answered is not at the AME exam. It's well before you go in there and understanding what that process looks like before you darken the doors of an AME.
We hear pilots sort of complain that the process takes so long, whether it's a deferment or a special issuance. Why does it take so long to deal with the FAA?
So a lot of it has to do with the preparation that Dan was talking about. If you walk in completely unprepared and your AME has no choice but to defer you, now you get put in the stack of all the other deferments. Last year, I believe the FAA had about 500,000 applications, and they have a continuing increase of about 6 to 12% per year of applications over the last decade, but they don't have any more staff. So as they get through, people are being deferred, they just get a larger and larger stack. And so it's taking, like Dan said, right now we're seeing about 6 months is the minimum time that it's going to take to get a medical. But many of these things can be prepared for in advance. And then the other thing is making sure you're using a good AME. So not every pilot is an amazing pilot that not every AME really understands the rules, particularly the newer rules that have come out in the last year. The training mandate by the FAA is every 3 years, but they put out updates 11 times a year. So if your AME is not up to speed on the updates and he's not willing to look at your paperwork and work with you, well then even if you could be issued at the exam, you run the risk of getting deferred anyway.
Yeah, you and I have talked about it before. There are multiple kinds of AMEs, right?
Right.
You had said you go to one, it may not be going to the other because it's workload.
Right.
Right? Were there 3 types of AMEs that you sort of...
Yeah, so we kind of lump AMEs into 3 types. So you have kind of your casual AME, so he might do 5 or 10 exams a year. He's going to do his training every 3 years, so he's probably not up to speed. He might be an excellent doctor, but maybe not the greatest AME if he doesn't have a lot of passion for aviation. On the other end of the spectrum is the full-time AME, where they just knock out 20 to 30 exams a day. Well, like Dan said before, they're looking at you right now, how are you doing, and you paid your $150 or $200 for a 15 to 20 minute appointment. They don't have time built into their business to help you with the paperwork and look at 50 pages of paperwork and really determine if you can get your medical that day. They're just going to default to deferring you to the FAA and let them sort it out because it's just not in their business model. In the middle, which is probably the smallest supply of AMEs, are the folks who are passionate about aviation and they have their business set up in a way where they can take time to look at your information or help you after hours or however it is that they set it up, where they're going to be more likely to work with you on figuring out what the process is, what you need, and do you have all the right stuff.
So how do you, first step before you go for the sort of medical exam, how do you sort of self-evaluate yourself? And I'm talking about looking at medications, looking at existing conditions, and another thing that you had said is it's not like going to your primary care doc. Right?
Right. It's not like going to your primary care. Your primary care doctor is looking at taking care of you medically, and certain things that they are not concerned about, the FAA is going to be concerned about because the FAA is looking at it from a risk mitigation perspective. So it's a little bit different. For example, if your doctor, one of the things we talked about before was hypothyroidism. And you can fly with hypothyroidism as long as your labs are in range and your medication is good and your doctor says that you don't have any symptoms. But if you show up to that exam without any of that information, well, a note that your doctor says, hey, he's fine, I've been taking care of him for years, he's fine. Well, the FAA wants not just opinion from your doctor, but they want evidence. So they want evidence and opinion. They're going to want lab values, they're going to want certain things done on the physical exam, and then they're going to want the opinion as well. So they're going to want to see that evidence that backs up the opinion from the doctor. So overall, preparation, one of the things that we have on our website is a MedExpress simulator. And so that's a really good way for people to take a look at what the questions are. If you haven't filled out MedExpress in a long time, or it's your first time ever filling it out, we also have an article on our website on how to fill out MedExpress. So you can fill it out and look, and if you're checking a bunch of yeses, or you have a whole bunch of doctor's appointments, it might be worth talking to somebody, either setting up a consultation appointment with an AME or calling a consultation service like ours. There are a couple of others out there as well, and start asking, hey, should I be worried about this? Should I not be worried about this? You know, AOPA's got a great resource. If you're an AOPA member, they have some information that they can provide as well that's available to all their members. Their pilot protection service has some higher level service, but all members get kind of their basic medical information. So that's a good place to start as well.
You know, Dan, you and I touched upon it before, and you know, so much attention is placed on older pilots in AME certification, but there's also a snag for younger pilots too, right?
There, absolutely. So when you fill out MedExpress, and this is whether you're a first-time applicant or whether you've been applying many times, there's really three components to your medical history that the FAA is asking about. So they're looking at current medications. They're looking at your doctor's visits that you've gone to within the last 3 years, and then they're looking for other medical conditions ever in your life. And so I think that's really the snag that younger pilots run into, particularly first-time applicants, is you might be applying for a medical certificate for the first time when you're in your mid-20s, in your early 20s, and maybe you took ADHD medications when you were in first and second grade. It might not occur to you that that's a medical condition you need to report, you know, but it definitely is from an FAA perspective. Similarly, I think Keith had a client recently who checked no to everything on his past medical history, and during the AME exam had a big thoracotomy scar from when he had open heart surgery as a child. He's going to annual visits with the cardiologist, but in his mind he's healthy. It hasn't bothered him. He's not taking medications, and so he doesn't think about that as an active medical problem. And so really, as you're preparing for that exam, it's so important to really take the time to prepare for it. And that section 18 is really asking about medical conditions ever in your life. And so really trying to answer that question comprehensively and knowing how each one of those conditions might affect your certification is kind of the minimum preparation that you need to do before you apply.
So, you know, talking about conditions, and I know it's almost endless, right? But, you know, when we talk about how the process and the rules have changed over the years, how has the FAA become more lenient and maybe more stringent when it comes to diseases and conditions? Can we talk about a couple of examples?
Sure. So diabetes is actually a really good example of something that only 5 to 10 years ago, someone with type 1 diabetes was never going to get a class 1 medical. But with modern medicine and modern technology, with continuous glucose monitors and insulin pumps, a diabetic who's following a proper diet and using the latest technology, they can keep their blood sugars and their insulin in such a tight window that now there are people with type 1 diabetes who have first-class medicals and are flying for the airlines. So that's a big significant one. Now, some people will argue that the FAA kind of had to be forced into looking at the data to accept that. It is a government organization. They do not respond at the speed of light sometimes, but they are willing to make changes when the evidence is in front of them. Neurology is another one. Just last year, they updated a lot of their neurological protocols based on head injuries and brain bleeds, whereas it used to be a minimum 5-year wait for certain brain bleeds that is now down to a 2-year wait. So that's a pretty significant change for some folks and can make a big difference in their life.
Yeah. Dan, let's talk a little bit about post-surgery responsibilities, right? So you go in for a surgery, no matter how minor it might be. What are your responsibilities as a pilot when it comes to maybe grounding yourself. So you've got a current medical, it's not due for 6 months or a year or whatever. What do you expect it to do? And we get that question a lot.
That's a really great question. And so the governing regulation is 14 CFR 61.53, which is a prohibition against flying during a known medical deficiency. And so effectively, between your AME exams, you act as your own flight surgeon, if you will. So it really depends on what the underlying condition is and how it's treated. So let's take surgery out of the question for the moment. You know, let's say that you fall down and you break your arm, right? Well, clearly, I think most rational pilots are going to look at their arm in a cast and realize I can't manipulate the controls I need to. I really need to, wait till this, this broken arm recovers. Wait till I'm back to more, kind of a full functional status before I jump on the cockpit of an airplane again. And that's pretty intuitive, right? The same thing really applies to surgery. So that same broken arm, if it required that your orthopedist went in there, put some plates on the broken bone, and then you had to wait in the cast and get your orthopedist to clear you before you fly again. Really, in that case, after you recover from that injury, after you have clearance from the orthopedist that you can go back to flying, that's really good enough. Now you need to report that on your next medical certificate application, but really once your doctors are comfortable with your condition, you're okay to go back as long as you're not taking any disqualifying medications like post-operative Percocet and or narcotic pain medications. Now, let's take another surgery. Let's say you had a heart condition because you had a heart attack and you had a stent or open heart surgery of some kind. Well, that obviously is going to require a lot more scrutiny from the FAA, a lot more gathering of records from your treating physicians, and so really the FAA looks at how are you doing now from a symptom standpoint, and what's the risk that underlying condition could affect you in the future, and so there's quite a bit of discretion there, but it really boils down to are you actually kind of back to the same level of fitness and function that you were when the certificate was issued.
Yeah. We could talk about these conditions forever because there's so many and there's so many different scenarios, but I do want to talk about your services and the help that you can offer folks before they even get involved in this.
Sure. So we do have that MedExpress sim that I talked about. It's actually free to use. There's no cost to it. You can fill it out as much as you want. There's an option that if you would like either myself or Dan to review it and provide some feedback, that is $50 to have that review, and we'll provide some pretty detailed feedback on the answers that you provide in there. The next level from there is when you know you have an issue and you would like help to get through, or you think you have an issue, we do offer a free 15-minute consultation. Now, we do kind of screen some folks. There's some folks who really don't need a consultation. Hey, my doctor just gave me Tylenol. Okay, you don't need to talk to us about that. And our nurses will help answer some of that questions. But our nurses will, make sure that the people who can appropriately benefit from a consultation will get one. And we can talk through that issue, and a lot of times we can tell pilots that their concern is really not that big of a deal to the FAA. But if it is, we will tell them, what we can do to help and how we can make it go as quickly as possible, or just give them some resources that they can move ahead on their own. If they would like our help, it is our record review and case preparation service. And we do a flat rate fee, so regardless of how long that process takes, it's the same cost. So that's an $1,800 flat rate fee. Along the same lines, we do have a VA disability service for veterans. What we noticed, and a lot of people probably saw in the last few years, is there was some issues between VA disability and the FAA. And what we found in working with a lot of veteran clients is that many of them, they just kind of got walked down a path to VA disability that they were just doing what they were told, and they didn't really understand, one, the implications, or two, how things were going to turn out until they received that paper from the VA. And so a lot of times things just, they didn't intend to do things that way, but they just kind of fell out that way. So we started a disability service for veterans or for active military people looking to separate to help guide them through a legitimate VA disability that's not really at significant risk for their FAA medical. And that can help preserve, some significant income for those who are transitioning, particularly to a Part 121 career. And then we have what we call a subscription service. So people who have a valid FAA medical with no new medical conditions, they can kind of, we have that free consultation, but it's only a one-time free consultation. So that subscription service allows people to have ongoing, email communications or scheduled calls with us throughout the year, and it's an annual renewing subscription. So many of our more complicated clients choose to stay on with us in the subscription because they have a special issuance with ongoing annual requirements. But sometimes people come and they've worked through the process on their own, and they had a difficult time doing it, and they don't want to struggle the next time. So they're eligible for the subscription as well because they have that valid medical.
Dan, pilots have sort of got a reputation as being pretty hardy, sturdy folks. But let's talk a little bit about mental health issues, talking about depression and some of the other issues that people don't really think about when it comes to medical certification. What do you think?
Well, I think, there's been some high-profile accidents. Germanwings is a prime example of how a mental health condition can manifest in really severe safety, tragic outcomes. And I think, nobody, pilots or the general public in particular, wants somebody who is suicidal with a severe active mental health condition at the controls of the airplane. So that's why the FAA has the policies that they have in place. And in general, I think the FAA's policies are actually, extremely rational and extremely reasonable. On the flip side, everybody goes through life, and it's not an easy path for most people, and so divorces, major career transitions, financial troubles, and the list goes on, death of loved ones. It's normal to have periods of your life where you struggle and you reach out for help, or because of some of those relationship problems, you go seek counseling, and I think that's become much more acceptable in our culture, appropriately so. And I think pilots have also begun to take more advantage of some of those counseling services. So I think the FAA is slowly but surely kind of softening their approach to it, and really all they're looking for is that if a pilot has a significant mental health condition, that it's fine to get treatment. They just want to see that whatever that acute stressor was has kind of resolved, that the symptoms, even if you've used medications to treat some of those symptoms, that you're either stable on that medication or that you've stopped it and you haven't had a recurrence of the symptoms. But generally speaking, the trend in their policies has been to increasingly consider each case on a case-by-case basis, make sure that safe pilots continue to fly, and that for people who have just had very self-limited, brief episodes of mental health conditions due to those life stressors that I talked about, if they're better, the policies now will allow AMEs to actually issue certificates at the exam. That's a recent change within the last few months, really. But it's, for people with well-controlled mental health problems, it's becoming more and more acceptable for pilots to seek help and then return to the cockpit with minimal disruption to their medical certification. Now, the key here is that you actually seek help, you get treated, and you have documentation to demonstrate that you are safe to fly. They're not just going to take your word for it, but there is a pathway that's more permissive than it has been at any time in the past.
Yeah. One last thing before we start to wrap it up. It's important to stress that you don't work with the AME, right? You deal with the applicant directly. You're not really interfacing with the AME itself.
So for the most part, we are working directly with the pilot in question or the pilot to be in question. Now, we will work with that individual's treating physicians. We will work with their AME as needed. Sometimes it's not needed. For example, we had a gentleman who had an episode of what's called syncope or passing out, but it turns out it was just a simple dehydration episode. And so based on the guidelines, he was absolutely eligible to get his medical as long as he provided the right documentation that showed that it was from dehydration and not from a cardiac cause or something more concerning. Well, his AME was a little reticent to issue his medical, probably because he was one of those AMEs who doesn't do a lot of exams. And so he asked the AME, he said, "Hey, are you willing to talk to Wingman Med?" And he said he was. So he waited on deferring his medical until he spoke with us, and we showed him in the FAA guidance where he had the authority to issue the medical, and a couple days later he had his medical. Same thing with sometimes treating physicians. they don't necessarily always understand why we want a particular level of detail.
Yeah.
And so if we're having trouble with that and the pilot is able to get them to be willing to talk to us, we can talk to that doctor and explain why that level of detail is necessary. But overall, we are primarily working with the individual who needs the assistance.
Yeah. And another thing to stress is all of your work is remote, right? For the most part, you can't come in and see you guys?
So for the most part, our work has been remote. However, Dan has an office open in San Diego now.
Okay. Where can you learn more about your services? And it's a pretty good website. I've been on it, and I particularly like the medication utility.
Database. Yeah. So wingmanmed.com is where you can find us. There's a big free consult button right there in the middle. There's a menu in the upper right-hand corner, and that's where you can find the medication database and the MedExpress simulator.
Yep. And you've got a pretty active Facebook page. You're active on social media. Very resourceful. And you're also here at AirVenture, going to be doing some seminars?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, you've been watching Aviation Consumer Live. It's a Oshkosh Live for Fire Crown. We'd like to thank one of our segment sponsors, Lightspeed Aviation, for bringing this show every morning. It's gone well. Larry Anglosano for Aviation Consumer with Doc Dan, Doc Keith. Appreciate you coming on the show. Very helpful, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you
for having us.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Get. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Next.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Trashed.
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Hundreds of majors, an amazing campus, faculty mentors. You can find what you're looking for at Middle Tennessee State, the University of Opportunities. We do it all.
Tempest Aero Group is a leading general aviation marketing and distribution company that has partnered with some of the best brands in the industry, including Tempest, Alcor, Marvel Schebler, Precision Air Motive, Consolidated Fuel Systems, and Stratus Tool Technologies. These brands represent high-quality aviation components and tools for OEM and aftermarket applications.
Quality, innovation, performance. Tempest. Tempest plays a vital role in the industry, and in today's world, we are the leading spark plug and oil filter manufacturer for general aviation. We've been able to not only release new products, but we've taken legacy products and created innovations. We take great pride, not only from a design standpoint, but from a manufacturing standpoint, all the way down to making sure the customer is satisfied with the product. Quality, innovation, performance. Tempest.
What a beautiful day today is to formally announce a new milestone in the storied history of our aerospace department. Our soon-to-be new aviation campus in this beautiful city of Shelbyville promises to expand our capabilities even further. It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we are excited for the future.
I'm really proud of our state, and guess what? It's because of you. What we have in this program at MTSU is unique to the country. It's one of the leading aerospace programs in America, and it's why I'm here today, and all these leaders of the General Assembly decided to put some $67 million toward this program, because this matters to Tennessee, it matters to our future. So thank you for having me, sir.
All right, Luke, thanks for coming to hang
Yeah,
out with us
thanks for
today.
having
I mean,
me.
it's a little humid
I'm
out here
excited.
this afternoon in Oshkosh. We had a little thunderstorm this morning, but overall, it's been a pretty good time. What do you think about the show so far?
Maybe some of the best weather I've seen. I've done a few Oshkoshes now.
Knock on wood.
Knock
right?
on, yes. I brought my poncho just in case. You never know.
Well, you're from Phoenix, so
Phoenix, yep.
A little bit of weather, it's a little scary to see a little rain here.
You know what? This is cold for me. It's
Yeah.
110 degrees at home, so this is a little bit cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I'm surprised you weren't wearing a jacket this morning. I was even cold.
Well, I was wearing a jacket. Yeah, it's over there. No, I was.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. So, we're here. We're talking about, we got a lot of different topics here on our show this week, but, one that we didn't really cover is flight schools.
Yeah.
And, I've known Sierra Charlie. I've known several people involved in it for a long time. And I want to bring you on to talk about what you guys do. There's a lot of flight schools in the Phoenix area.
Sure.
And, I want to talk to you guys a little more. What makes you guys different? What do you guys deliver that nobody else does?
Well, thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to be on. We've been around now for 8 years. I started with the school 6 years ago. We had 2 airplanes, and the owner of the flight school actually gave me my private certificate. So back.
All right, Luke, thanks for coming to hang
Yeah,
out with
thanks
us
for
today.
having
I mean,
me.
it's a little humid
I'm
out here
excited.
this afternoon in Oshkosh. We had a little thunderstorm this morning, but overall, it's been a pretty good time. What do you think about the show so far?
Maybe some of the best weather I've seen. I've done a few Oshkoshes now.
Knock on wood.
Knock
right?
on, yes. I brought my poncho just in case. You never know.
Well, you're from Phoenix, so
Phoenix, yep.
A little bit of weather, it's a little scary to see a little rain here.
You know what? This is cold for me. It's
Yeah.
110 degrees at home, so this is a little bit cold.
Yeah.
But yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, man, that's cool. I'm surprised you weren't wearing a jacket this morning. I was even cold.
Well, I was wearing a jacket. Yeah, it's over there. No, I was.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. So, we're here. We're talking about, we got a lot of different topics here on our show this week, but, one that we didn't really cover is flight schools.
Yeah.
And, I've known Sierra Charlie. I've known several people involved in it for a long time. And I want to bring you on to talk about what you guys do. There's a lot of flight schools in the Phoenix area.
Sure.
And, I want to talk to you guys a little more. What makes you guys different? What do you guys deliver that nobody else does?
Well, thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to be on. We've been around now for 8 years. I started with the school 6 years ago. We had 2 airplanes, and the owner of the flight school actually gave me my private certificate. So back when we had kind of a bullpen, 2 offices, and 2 airplanes, and now we're at 16 airplanes with 150 on order. So some big growth plans coming.
Nice.
But I think what's led to our success is we take a lot of pride in taking care of our students.
Right.
If we take care of our students, they'll take care of us in referrals, and the education piece is so important, especially nowadays. I'm sure we'll talk about hiring, but having a good education is so important. That's something that we've spent a lot of time developing and making sure we do right.
Right. So where you guys are at Scottsdale.
Yep, Scottsdale and Chandler, Arizona. So 2 locations out there.
Yep. And you guys looking to maybe expand a little more?
A little bit, yeah. If you know Scottsdale, you can't quite put 150 airplanes there.
Yeah.
So,
That's for sure.
Yeah. We've looked at a bunch of different locations.
Yeah.
I can't quite say where yet, but we've definitely got some big plans
All right.
in the back of our head.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, tell me again. So you started 8 years ago.
Yep.
Probably 2020, 2021, the demand for flight training just exploded, right?
Yeah.
As these new collective bargainings were coming out at these airlines, made the job, pretty enticing for a lot of people. So, what did you guys see? How many students were you bringing in the door back then?
Yeah.
Was it just a large volume?
Yeah. March of 2020 is when I came on full time at Sierra Charlie. I'd played hockey in my previous life. Until then, I retired in March of 2020, and then I came to work full time in aviation.
Nice.
I had done the summers previous, and March of 2020 was a huge growth year for us. We saw tons of people just wanting to get into aviation for fun. A lot of people career.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say 2021. January of 21 is where we really saw the big growth in career flight training.
Right.
2020 was a good mix, about 50-50. But then after that, we saw a huge growth period in career flight training.
Nice.
It was really cool to see.
Nice. So how many students you guys currently have roughly?
About 300. About 300 currently.
And so I'm just, spitballing here, but are most of them looking to go to the Part 121 world, or is it just you have people in there that are kind of like, I just want to get my license and do it at a cool place?
So about 80% of our business is career pilot program.
Yep.
What we really impress upon is your mind's going to change 5-10 different times, probably, going through your flight training.
Right.
We see it all the time.
Right.
I've got a good buddy that's here with us, and he's wanted to go to United Airlines his whole life, and now he's thinking about going NetJets, right?
Oh.
And so I think you really develop a taste for what you want to do over time. And within aviation, I've seen buddies do this. They've wanted to go 121 their whole life, and now they're doing 135 or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so I think you really develop that through your training, what you want to do. But kind of going back to my point, I think for us, our big thing and what's led us to be successful is we'll set you up for whatever path you want to do. Right. We're not just going to set you up to go to one airline or one specific route. We want to make you a whole pilot, so you can go wherever you want. It sets you up for success.
Right. So, right now, obviously, there's a lot of headlines out about pilot, hiring's changed, and it certainly has year over year. There's been some changes on the major airline side. But what do you tell students that might be a little worried?
Yeah.
What do you guys tell them as a flight school?
Yeah, so we usually get up in front of the whiteboard and we show a big up and down.
Right.
We draw with some expo marker.
Right.
It's just what the airlines typically do.
Right.
NetJets is still hiring. This place is still hiring. I think what we've seen, which has been unprecedented, is people having false expectations on where they should be right out of flight school. They've had friends go and have these crazy offers flying in NetJets or flying at maybe a 121 carrier that we've not typically seen.
Right.
And so I think just bringing those expectations back to where they should be is the first thing that we do. But we also look 2 years in advance, right? We're not going to really send someone for their first job for 2 years, right?
Right.
They got to do training with us, and then they got to flight instruct.
Right.
So really making sure we're painting a picture 2 years from now of what we believe the airlines are going to look like and what we know from the data we get.
Right. So just led me into my next question. It's almost like you planned that. But tell me, there's a lot of flight schools, but the reason I wanted to talk to you especially is because you guys have really taken data and used it to kind of make decisions. So tell me a little bit more about that and how you all do that.
Yeah, so we're very big on innovation, and I think one area where we're really doing that well is we call it FOQA or FDA, flight deck analysis. And so the airlines do this pretty religiously. Basically, every airline does it.
Oh, yeah.
But being able to see exactly what's going on in the airplane. It's kind of crazy to think most flight schools, probably 95% of flight schools, when that cockpit door closes, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And like I said, I come from the sports world. I would review tape after every game, right? I would want to see where I'm at, how I'm doing, and we want to do that with aviation.
Right.
We want to have a powerful debrief where you sit there, you can go over the whole flight and see what went wrong. Not thinking back, okay, I need to do this on slow flight, and kind of try to piece it together. We actually have data that can show you that. We're working on that pretty extensively, but where we're already seeing benefits is in the maintenance side of things. So we're able to track issues before they become problems.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that we just can't see without seeing that data.
Right.
We can see engine trend monitoring. We can see one of the funniest ones, probably flat spots. A lot of flight schools get tons of flat spots, and we were victim to that. And what we noticed, and we started now seeing, is that a lot of our approach speeds were super high coming over the fence, about the last 100 feet. And so we came out with a bunch of literature on that, and we've had a ton of flat spots go down since then. So just little things like that, that of course helps our operation, keeps airplanes flying.
Right.
But little things like that we're constantly trying to innovate on And I think over the next year, we're going to see a big push for flight deck analysis in flight schools. But the execution part, I think, is going to be really important.
Yeah. Can you tell me, I mean, specific, instance maybe recently, I think you already kind of mentioned one before we talked here, but about where this data really came in handy. I think you're talking about an engine issue or something.
Yeah, so where we see it a lot is actually on like CHTs, for example. So we look for variation between CHTs. Of course, we're in a hot climate, it's 115, 120 degrees out. It's really important that we keep CHT temperatures down. And we started noticing that one CHT was running hotter than the other. The data was able to tell us that. We found out we had a cylinder going bad. But we were able to replace that at a 100-hour inspection rather than when it actually became a problem. And so that's stuff that we're trying to constantly develop and find ways that we can find stuff sooner. Because if we can find stuff while it's on the ground, of course, it's better for the pilots and better for our maintenance team.
Yeah, that's cool. What are some data points that you, really are constantly looking? You mentioned that one, but what are some other stuff? Descent rates on landing,
Yeah, descent rates, absolutely.
That's a good way to rate.
Airspeed?
A good way to rate
landing. Airspeed's a big one. Airspeed's a big one.
Yeah.
You see a lot of students uncomfortable going slow.
Yeah.
Hey, we practice slow flight, we do all these things.
Right.
You think they'd be comfortable. And we see quite often that students aren't comfortable coming at approach speed over the fence.
Right.
And we can say that by going, oh yeah, he looks like he's going fast, but now that we can put a number to it, pull a student instructor in and make it instructional, we found to be really powerful.
That's
there's so many metrics, and you don't want to get bogged down too much by the metrics for sure. Paralysis by analysis, I think is the phrase, right?
Yes.
So we're being very strategic on how we're really going about taking the data, using it, making it effective. It's allowed us to turn off some airports at night. So there's some airports that we don't allow touch and goes at night. We were finding that we were departing the runway after a touch and go past the point we felt comfortable. So data like that, where we just think we're really making it a safer environment for our pilots and our students.
Right, that's cool. So tell me about the fleet. You guys have a fairly new fleet, if not completely new.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So average age of our fleet's 2020. We fly all Cessna 172s. We have a Piper Seminole. We've kind of built that fleet over the last little bit. We've got 8 new 172s coming in the next 8 months. But kind of what you'll hear from what I just said is we have a standardized fleet.
Right.
So Southwest Airlines, which I'm sure everyone knows, we mimic them pretty closely. We've got quotes from their HQ in our office. We're very big on standardization and everything being the exact same, and we've brought that model to our flight school, and it's allowed us to be successful.
Yeah, that's interesting. So tell me, you got a student that wants to come work at Sierra Charlie or fly down there. They live in, I don't know, New York.
Yeah, sure.
You guys help them out?
We get tons of students from outside Arizona.
Yeah.
I'd say 50% of our student base is from outside Arizona.
Wow.
We get a lot of California, Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
We usually see the Pacific Northwest right after summer.
Yeah.
Right, you get your private, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Then the rain showers come and you move to somewhere like Arizona.
Well, that's all the more reason to go get that instrument rating.
Exactly, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
we get tons of students from there. A lot of students from the Midwest and East Coast. So we're super diverse around the country. But to kind of answer your question, we help students all the time. Move to Arizona, find places. We get a large student base that will get a house and want a roommate. A lot of students want roommates, and we try our best to help arrange that. But tons of students come from outside Arizona.
Yeah, and I'll tell anybody who wants to move to Arizona, do it.
Do it.
Great place.
100%.
100%.
100%.
As a Sun Devil, it is the best place.
Well, I'm from Washington originally, so I can appreciate Arizona.
Yeah, and I'm from
I've lived a few other places.
Yeah, same here, and that's the best place to live.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
And great for flight training.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Good weather most of the time. This time of year you get those dust storms, but those last couple hours,
We do, and we don't really see that affect flight operations too much.
Right.
We see it affect flight operations kind of at the nighttime, which is where we push a lot of our instrument flying. But in the morning, we're still able to run all normal operations.
Yeah, I think as somebody who doesn't fly, I've been in a Cessna.
We need to get you flying again.
Yeah. Somebody.
I know a place. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. You probably know a place. Being in the Cessna when it's 120 degrees in the afternoon. That's always a fun ride.
Yeah, we start as early as 5 a.m.
Yeah, that's
and good. So our goal is we try to get all the 2-hour flights out of the way in the mornings.
Yeah.
And in the evenings, we're going to do the longer instrument flights where we're up at altitude for an extended period of time.
Right.
We joke, climb to 75 degrees. you know, when it's 110 degrees on the ground. But, you know, we try our best to mitigate that, which is how we run our operation.
Yeah, that's good because, you know, I had to chew that nausea gum.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, there's lots of students that, you know, they get into flight training, they're in that exact same spot.
Yeah.
Our VP got sick his first 20 flights.
Wow.
He has his private certificate now, and you know, a lot of people we see work out, and some people, it really just depends on who you are.
Yeah, so, you know, obviously flight training is very expensive. That's a very well-known fact.
Yeah.
What do you guys do to help? I mean, do you have partnerships with any, you know, loan, anybody who can provide a loan, or how do you guys do that?
We have a very good relationship with Meritize, our loan provider. We're actually the first Part 61 school on their platform.
Yeah.
So that's something maybe that's a little different too we can talk about is we're not 141. And I know a lot of people think that, and they think of mom and pop, 2 airplanes in a hangar.
Yeah.
We're not like that at all.
Yeah, 2 like 60-year-old Cessnas, right?
Exactly. You know, we operate just like a 141. If you look back at when the regulations were updated last time for 141, it's just not conducive to how we run our operation. Like you said, we're big on data. We change our syllabus once a quarter. The learning environment is ever changing. I've seen that over the last couple of years I've been here. And so you really need to develop content that's good today but good tomorrow. And so that's the reason why we run Part 61.
Right.
But being the first Part 61 school at Meritize gave them a lot of confidence in what we're doing. They've branched out to other Part 61 schools, which is good to see. But we help out students really, I think, on the value side. Flight training is expensive.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. You know, a new 172 is $700,000 now.
Right.
And we have new 172s coming. So it's really tough to keep costs down when asset costs are so high, right? But I think where we've really added ourselves into the mix is on the value proposition.
Right.
We, I believe, provide more value than most flight schools do. Like, think about the data we're talking about. Most flight schools aren't doing that.
Yeah.
We do things that we're going to be launching later this year that will be available to a lot of schools to help a lot of students out. We think we've got the secret sauce that we've done a really good job of developing, but helping students that maybe can't come to Arizona. You know, maybe they're stuck in Washington or wherever it is.
Right.
But in terms of the value, you know, we've tried to help add immense value with just what we're adding day to day in our syllabus, the people that we provide. You know, aviation isn't cheap wherever you go. We're actually less expensive than some of the big box schools that you see, and I think we even add more value than them.
Yeah, yeah. So what's next? You know, what do you think is next for kind of the flight training world? What's the future look like now that we have these changing hiring trends? And like you said, it's cyclical. Yeah. It'll likely come back to normal levels at some point. But what's the future of flight training? Like, what do you see this going? Is it the data? What is it?
Yeah, I think we're going to start to see people get a little more serious.
Right.
We're not a school where you can kind of find your way through it.
Right.
You're not going to hide it, Sierra Charlie. We talk about that on day one of every class. We're a school where if you want to come to be the best pilot, this is why you come here.
Right.
And I think we're going to see hopefully more of that because it's going to be more competitive. That's one of the things I think from our perspective we didn't like to see is it was less competitive. And so you got people that were getting into aviation that were more just doing it to get into it. And I think now we're starting to see over the last few months, people are getting into it for the love of aviation.
Right.
This is what they want to do.
Right.
And I think we're going to see a better pilot from that.
Right.
I think we're going to see hopefully a lot more innovation in flight data, the FDA we're talking about. I think we're going to see a lot more innovation on flight simulators. You happen to be at a flight simulator.
Yeah, of course we do.
I think a lot more innovation on that.
Yep.
A lot more, when a student goes home, what are they doing at home, right? They're at the school for 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe a 2-hour ground. So we're seeing 5 hours out of a 24-hour day.
Right.
What can we do now at home to provide more value? And that's something that we're excited to start talking about more later at the end of the year that we've developed over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But how can we give this all-around package? I think that's where schools have lacked. Since the beginning of time, really.
Yeah. Well, and what about specifically for Sierra Charlie?
Yeah.
You said you maybe a few new locations.
Yeah.
What else?
We have some airplanes. We were just at the Elixir booth. That's an exciting airplane. I know they're working towards FAA certification right now.
Right.
But it's really exciting airplane. I think it could be revolutionary. Obviously, it's a less expensive option compared to some of the current existing options. So that'll help a lot of schools get into modern and advanced aircraft.
Right.
But also, I think that can make a big game changer in cost of flight training.
Right.
It's definitely, asset cost is less, cost to operate is significantly less. So I think Elixir's doing a great job on that front. I think we'll start to see some changes hopefully on some of these new deliveries of aircraft to help us be more efficient.
Right.
But for us, we're excited. We've got a lot of airplanes coming. We want to train the next generation of pilots. We also want to train the best generation of pilots.
Right.
That's something that we're really motivated to do, and continue to do so with these new deliveries of airplanes coming.
Awesome, man. All right, well, Luke, thanks for coming on. It's nice to
Thank
see
you
you
for
outside
having
of
me.
Arizona.
We're going to get you flying.
Yeah, I know. I got to get around to it. Nice to see you outside of Arizona.
Yeah.
A little cooler up here.
A little cooler.
But yeah, thanks for coming on and joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right, thanks, guys.
So, Sean, thanks for having me up here today.
Absolutely.
Tell us what you do at MTSU. What's your role in aerospace?
So I'm one of the assistant flight training managers, so I still get to instruct some students, and then I also work here at the airport campus and supervise some instructors as well.
And you're one of our grads, correct?
Yes, sir. I graduated in the spring of 2022.
Wonderful. And your degree was in?
Aerospace professional pilot.
Shouldn't be surprised about that. We've talked about this before, but you're a former member of Civil Air Patrol?
Yes, sir. I started in Civil Air Patrol when I was about 12. That's actually how I discovered the program here at MTSU was on an orientation flight. I got to come to the flight school, got to tour, went to go get lunch here in Murfreesboro at Toots, and flew back home. And for a young 12-year-old, it was kind of crazy to fly halfway across Tennessee in the span of just an afternoon, and kind of planted that seed for the program and wanting to be a pilot.
And now you're training students at one of the nation's top flight schools at a university. You got to meet the National Commander of Civil Air Patrol and show him your aircraft when we were at EAA in Oshkosh. That must have been cool.
Absolutely, it was.
Yeah, that was
kind of cool to look back and see how far I've come.
Yeah, no, it was really fantastic. So let's talk about the DA-40. Tell me about this aircraft we're going to be flying.
Yeah, so this is our primary trainer right here, the Diamond Star DA-40. We operate 38 of these aircraft, and students will do everything from their private pilot, instrument rating, commercial pilot, and flight instructor certificate all on this aircraft here. So this is our main workhorse of the fleet.
So what's the main attributes about this plane? Brag on it a little bit.
Yeah, so two best things about this airplane, probably its nice, long, narrow wingspan. It's a really stable training platform, as well as our nice bubble canopy there with good visibility out of it, and full glass cockpit as well. So really good in terms of technically advanced aircraft and giving students the skills that they need for learning the basic skills of programming and setting up the flight management system that translate directly over into the airline type flying.
And it's sweet to fly too, right?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to fly.
What do I need to be paying attention to when we're going to be flying here?
We'll go out, fly around the Murfreesboro area. We'll take you over campus. We'll do some circles over the top of campus, get a good, nice bird's eye view. We'll come back here in the pattern and we'll get to do some landings.
All right, let's get in the plane. Let's do this.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
All right, so we're going to run through our pre-flight checklist here. So before y'all got here, we already ran through the weather, weight and balance and all that. We've already got the aircraft cover off. Master batteries coming on. Any questions on the passenger briefing?
Sounds good.
Sweet. All righty. Sit back.
What's
here.
next?
All right, so we got safety belts fastened, baggage security rear door and front canopy closed and latched. Trim is at takeoff, fuel selector, desired tank, they're both full. Throttle idle, prop forward, mixture lean, friction lock adjusts. That's good right there. Go ahead and set this parking brake right there and mute that. Alternate air is closed, alternate static is closed. Central bus switch off, even on master off. Master battery is on. Cockpit lighting, go ahead and turn that off right there. Before engine start checklist is complete. All right, clear prop. So we've got these two screens here. This is our primary flight display here. It's going to have all of our primary instrumentations on it. And this is our multifunction display, so it's going to have items such as our engine instruments here and moving map as well there.
You know, one of the things I hear everybody talking about is the fact that this is a glass canopy and it really provides this amazing view when you're flying, right? That's got to be a great selling point for this aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with the low wing design. It provides really good overall visibility, which it's not only nice to look outside, it's also a really good safety measure as well, to be able to spot other airplanes and have good situational awareness.
What would you tell a prospective student in evaluating a flight school, and what were the choices that led you to confirm that this is the right place to be?
I'd say the first thing to look at is safety. Our school has a very strong safety culture. The next would be price, and that's another reason why I ended up choosing this program was its affordability. And then lastly, the fleet. I really like the VA-40. I fell in love from the first flight with the Diamond. It flies and handles great. And it's an excellent training platform for any new and potential students and even experienced pilots alike. When I originally came to the program, all I really thought I wanted to do was come through the program, become an airline pilot. And it really wasn't until I started instructing that I realized all the different possibilities that there are. I found great community here. We're a large flight school, but we still maintain that close, tight-knit community, and it's really easy to find your people here.
Great job.
We do it all. We do it all.
Hundreds of majors, an amazing campus, faculty mentors. You can find what you're looking for at Middle Tennessee State, the University of Opportunities. We do it all.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Yeah. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Trashed.
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
All right, guys, good morning. Welcome into our final day of Oshkosh Live here in our final Plane and Pilot segment, up with myself, Amy Wilder, and Jeremy King is back with us once again, our lovely contributor. Guys, how do we feel on day 4?
Pretty tired.
Yeah.
But happy to.
Yeah. I'm out of socks and underwear. It's time to start pointing an airplane back towards Atlanta.
That's kind of how it gets, right? Like Oshkosh is one of those places where you get a little grungy, you get a little tired, and then there's people who are coming here for the first day, right? Like day 4 for us is day 1 for them. They're the fresh faces, and we're just like, how are you guys doing this still? Exactly, right?
Yeah, it's a steady flow as the week goes on with people coming in for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a lot of fresh faces, a lot of new airplanes showing up in the campgrounds, and it's a continual turnover.
That's a really good place to start, I think, for today, because we're going to hit on some pieces that involve some Oshkosh culture. We're going to talk about some really interesting features that are going on here, vintage judging, as well as a cool little kid feature, which I think is really, really nice. But I want to ask a little bit about some of like the turnover and the culture and maybe kind of like the cycles of EAA, right? Because we see a big influx the weekend before, and then Monday to Tuesday, it's like you've got this normal crowd. And then kind of what happens? Is it people leave and come back, or is it kind of this constant ebb and flow?
It seems to be a constant ebb and flow, and the night air show on Wednesday night seems to be kind of the anchoring point to either end or begin your week of AirVenture. A lot of people will come and stay, and so it was a huge push this morning of departures of people that stayed for the night show, and now they've got to get back to work and other obligations. And a lot of others flew in yesterday to catch the night show, and they'll stay through the weekend.
So, Amy, did you get to see any of the night show last night?
I did not make it to the night show last night. I catch it on the live feed, which is, pretty cool that EAA does that.
Yeah, it was spectacular. There's something about seeing, I think it was the F-16 and the F-22 that fly in the show, right?
Yeah, the afterburners right at sunset, the diamond trails in the exhaust, it was just amazing.
When you see the F-22 come through and it goes straight vertical and then they cut the engine and it just kind of sits there for a second and you're like, an airplane's not supposed to do that. People are not supposed to fly in airplanes like that.
Yeah, my airplane won't do that. It'll go up and it'll sit for about half a second, and then it's going to pancake right back down.
Right down there, right? And so, Amy, I know you said that you missed it, but it was pretty impressive. Is there a piece of the night air show that you think people should absolutely see?
I think the whole thing is spectacular. The fireworks are really cool. The engineering behind it is just incredible. They had some drones this year, which I don't think they've had drones before, have they?
I've seen drones at a couple of the shows over the year, and the night shows between Oshkosh and Sun and Fun sort of run together for me. But yeah, it's like a giant dot matrix printer in the sky that they all can change colors and make patterns and, pictures of airplanes. They had Rosie the Riveter in one pattern. And EAA Airventure logo across the sky that I managed to get a really good picture of from the campground. And the nice thing about the night air show, there are no bad seats because the air show's flown significantly higher than the day show to give you that extra margin. And so you can be out in the North 40 and have a really good seat sitting by your tent.
Yeah, when I left last night, there were people that were parked across the interstate that you could tell had been there watching the air show. They almost might have the best vantage point, right? You remove yourself a little bit from it, maybe you're not looking straight up, but you get that kind of long view. So before we get into our feature stories for today, talking about both of y'all's experiences here this week, Amy, has there been anything that you've picked up that where you've been like, this is a highlight? I heard that you just met the Artemis astronauts?
Not the astronauts.
Not the astronauts.
No. I met some of the guys in the NASA booth this morning, and I'm so exhausted after this week. They asked me if I had any questions, and I sort of blanked out and said, what's the airspeed of an unladen swallow? And after they stopped laughing and looked up the answer, because it is NASA, I got a nice patch and a pin from Marshall Space Center, which is pretty cool.
What was the answer?
It depends on the swallow. I mean, this is NASA. Come on, it's not going to be a simple
or an African swallow.
Well, they looked up barn swallow and something else, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it was 48 miles an hour or 32 miles an hour, depending on the bird. So
it's a pretty fast bird.
Pretty good range for swallows.
It's a pretty fast bird. They can get moving up there. So you met NASA people are obviously, I call them NASA people. That feels like diminishing. No. The folks from NASA are up there in terms of celebrity for the folks that are here at EAA, and it's almost kind of like a hero moment. I had a hero moment yesterday too. I was walking around Hangar D and stumbled into the federal side, which is off to the edge. They're doing seminars, whatever. And I come to the last booth and I look up and I'm like, oh my God, it's the Hurricane Hunters.
Yeah.
And I walk straight up to them and I go, you guys are my heroes. Because they are. It is a bucket list item, a dream of mine to fly with the Hurricane Hunters. And if you haven't been over there yet, you absolutely should go. They've got a virtual reality headset of them flying into, I believe it's Hurricane Ike from a couple of years ago. And the coolest thing about it is, I don't know if you guys know anything about hurricane flights. Do you?
A little bit.
Okay. So the cool thing about it is a hurricane basically works like a giant Carnot engine, right? You've got upflow in the middle, that's the eye, that's why it's so powerful. You're putting out heat, and the heat goes out this way, and that's your rising motion. You rise, you go out, and then you sink on the edges. So when the Hurricane Hunters fly their plane, you punch into the eye wall, and it's just steady calm. Nothing's going on in the eye wall. So steady, it's just like this beautiful Bluebird Day flight. But as soon as you punch the other side, you get hit with an updraft and then an immediate downdraft. So you just gain and you lose altitude. And in the virtual reality headset, it was almost enough to make me motion sick. So I can't even imagine what it's like in an actual airplane.
I love that explanation, Kaylee. It's really clear you're a meteorologist.
I've wanted to fly with the Hurricane Hunters all my life. That's been one of my big goals. And maybe we'll get a chance to do it, obviously not into a real storm, but just to be in an airplane would be legendary. Would you guys ever fly into a hurricane?
Maybe.
If you weren't the pilot, would you like take a ride along?
I think those guys are a little nuts. They're
You have to
probably
be.
some of the best pilots in the world. My brother-in-law was actually a typhoon chaser in Guam in the late 70s, early 80s, flying C-130s into typhoons.
That's a big plane to fly into a typhoon.
It's a big plane. I don't know. That might be beyond my comfort level. But I would love to fly with those guys. I think it'd be fantastic.
Jeremy, what do you think?
When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico a few years ago, I flew one of the last airline flights that arrived, and we actually flew between the bands of the storm to make it to San Juan. And that's probably about as close to a hurricane as I really feel like I need to get. I'm happy to leave that to the professionals with the airplanes that are built specifically for that task. It would be an interesting ride to go with them, though, for sure.
What about you, Kaylee? Would you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just sign me up to do it. I'm absolutely in. Maria's interesting, and I like that you shared that story because from a meteorological perspective, flying into the rain bands of a hurricane is almost one of the most dangerous points that you can get because you have so many miniature embedded circulations. They spin up tornadoes like that, especially if you're flying at those mid to low levels as you're landing in Puerto Rico. If I remember, Maria I think it was a Cat 3 by the time that it was over Puerto Rico. It had intensified and then dropped and then intensified again in the Gulf. What was that experience like other than just terrifying?
It just worked out luckily that the timing on the bands was such that we actually flew between the bands and not through the bands.
Okay.
And so it actually was a pretty smooth ride. I was surprised at how stable the air was around this hurricane that you know is massively unstable air. It was just heavy rain, and it was fine.
I love that. So we meet some of our heroes, and we have some of the best time here at EAA. Maybe I'll fly with the Hurricane Hunters before the year is up and check out the item off my bucket list. Let's move on to some of the stories that you guys have gathered and some of the folks you've talked to. Jeremy, what have you been doing, and who have you been talking to, and what kind of stories are on your docket now?
Well, so again, I've spent so much time in the vintage area this week. And we came across 19-year-old Luke, who had flown a Piper Cub, well, an L4, the military Cub, from just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, all the way here to Oshkosh.
Wow.
He landed here Wednesday. He flew the whole flight basically 1,000 feet above the ground. You know, just an epic journey. He's coming up on his commercial check ride. He's just got his tail wheel sign off a while back. Dee and Cynthia Bradford own the airplane, and they allowed him to do his tail wheel training in it and build up some time in exchange for him bringing it here, because in order for an aircraft to get judged for the competition, it has to fly in, or it has to be brought in and then fly at the airport. And so that way it could fly in, even though that they really weren't comfortable doing the trip themselves. And he's got an epic story about his journey in aviation and his flight up here in the L4.
And we actually got to sit down with him and hear a little bit about his journey and his story. So with that, the Cub, before we get into the video of his Cub, talk to me a little bit about the aircraft itself and what makes it special.
Okay, so the military used Piper Cubs during World War II as artillery spotters. They added extra windows to the cockpit area, and they made the rear seat where you could turn around and use where the baggage area would have been as a desk to keep track of your maps and to draw in your directions for artillery fire. They actually were some of the most feared weapons in the war, because if the ground soldiers saw the little airplanes circling overhead, they knew the heavy artillery was coming in pretty quick. So the L-birds, the liaison birds, played a vital role in the war, both in the Europe and the Pacific. And so that's kind of how the Cub went to war.
I love that, and a great story, and again, part of history and part of the vintage space. So let's go ahead and take a look at Luke's story. We got to hear a little bit from him and see just a little bit more of the insight into his journey from Charlotte all the way up here to Oshkosh.
So my name's Luke Hadeen. I'm a brand new commercial pilot, just passed my commercial check ride, and I flew this L4B Grasshopper, which is the military version of the J3 Cub, all the way from North Carolina. It is Dee and Cynthia Bradford's Cub and restored by Steve Vancey. And, you know, it was a fun trip and had a lot of fun doing it. I'm just trying to build tailwheel time and build more experience, and I hope to fly more vintage and warbird aircraft in the future. So the trip was great. Flying all the way from North Carolina, going over the mountains and then all the fields. It was great. The first day, started late and I had a pretty good headwind, so it took me about 4.5 hours to get to the western tip of Virginia. And then, so I overnighted there, and then the next morning took off at sunrise, and then it spent about 10.8 hours in the air, made it all the way to Poplar Grove, Illinois, and then the last day had an even worse headwind, and it took me about 3 hours to get from Poplar Grove, Illinois to Oshkosh. I only have 12 gallons of fuel because we only have the header tank. We want to try to keep this airplane as original as possible. So with that, doing the Fisk arrival would kind of be a little bit strenuous on my fuel reserves, that if I ever had to do a go-around, I'd have to basically find another airport. So I came in here Wednesday before the NOTAM went active, just to kind of avoid that situation entirely. So I was at an air show about a year ago, and I accidentally started selling t-shirts for a C-47 group called the Tunison Foundation, and they operate a C-47 named Placid Lassie. So that really got me into warbirds, and then I fell in love with the vintage side of it as well. So every time I'm at the airport, I try to, you know, find a cool tail dragger that's on the ramp, and then I saw a chief that was out on the ramp at my local airport in Lincolnton, and the pilot there, Aubrey Clark, actually turned out to be my next tailwheel instructor. And she taught me how to fly the L4, and she introduced me to the Bradford family. And from there, the Bradford family asked me to fly their L4 to Oshkosh. I'm also part of the D-Day squadron with Placid Lassie. So, you know, we just came back from Europe for the 80th anniversary of D-Day on the Legacy Tour. And because of that, you know, I got to fly all around with the beaches of Omaha and, you know, all that. So we spent 47 days on the road, and then I had the honor of flying back with the Savage family in the Western Airlines DC-3 across the Atlantic. It was about a 5-day trip, and just what an experience. So I'm currently working on my flight instructor. I'd like to become a tailwheel instructor after I get more experience. I love this type of flying. There's nothing better to it. I think, you know, it's really important that we get the younger generation involved in these old airplanes, because the truth behind it is that these airplanes will fly for the next 100 and more years, but we need the pilots to fly them, and we need the experience of the maintenance and the pilots. So, you know, for all these operators out there, I really encourage them to try to get the young people involved, and plus they make them better pilots as well. But in able for us to fly these airplanes for the next 100 years, we need to be able to pass it on to the next generation.
I have like chills listening to that, because he's 19 and he's speaking like somebody who's been a pilot for 50 plus years.
Right? I mean, kid's going places, obviously, and he's on a great trajectory. So it's going to be really interesting to check back in over the next couple Oshkoshes and see what he's up to at that point.
So he mentioned a really great point, is about, as part of this whole experience, is getting that younger generation to catch the bug, right? And a lot of this is, it's so inspiring to be here because it is interest growing. And maybe if you don't have the aviation bug, just seeing here and seeing the historic restored planes or the warbirds, it's enough to make you catch it and be like, wow, this is something that I can seriously be interested in. When it comes to capturing that younger generation, where do you think the responsibility lies? Is it on the industry as a whole? Is it on the individual pilots to pass on the passion? What do you think, Amy?
You know, I think a personal experience with an airplane at a young age ignites that magical spark, and for some people it works, for some people it just doesn't. Yesterday we visited a friend of Jeremy's in the campgrounds who flew in her de Havilland Beaver, which I've never actually been up close and personal with one of those airplanes before. I've admired them from afar. They're bigger than I expected, but there were a couple of little girls running around the plane while we were looking at it and talking about it. And we climbed up in the cockpit to look, and of course they immediately wanted to do the same thing. So Jeremy lifted them into the cockpit, and you could see the sparkles in those girls' eyes. It was almost like there was light shining out, and I thought, that's a future pilot. they've got it.
You see the spark, and it's like that moment where you're like, yes, I can tell. Jeremy, what do you think about that?
Well, it's on all of us. It's the industry, it's the regulators, and it's us, the individuals. It was an individual spark. My grandfather took me to the hangar where he worked on airplanes and put me in the pilot seat when I was about 11 years old and said, you know, you could do this, but you've got to work for it, because my family had no money for flying lessons. And things snowballed, and you know, you kind of make your own luck, and here we go. And so I try to do what I can to engage with children wherever I can, and young adults. And it's a bit of a struggle, because we've built giant fences around airports, and you know, all of a sudden there's these big barricades and you can't get in. And so it's a very daunting impression that you get when you first come up to an airport. And so really the EAA chapters, really with the Young Eagle rallies and events like that, they've really got to engage the communities and get people to bring their children to the airport, because it takes an active effort to get through the gates of the airport.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just want to turn away.
It feels like a cool kids club where it's like their perception is they won't let me in, but in reality, it's like all you got to do is ask to come through the gate,
Right.
and we're going to bring you in.
Right. And even as an adult, there's certain things that I thought that I was kind of barred from.
Yes.
And when we got to talking to the aircraft judges, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I was really surprised at how receptive they were to me showing up and crashing their party and sitting in on their meetings and riding along to look at some airplanes. I thought this was going to be kind of a secretive plan within the AirVenture community. And so the doors are generally unlocked in this business. They may be closed, but they're generally unlocked. And so
All you got to do is just pull the handle.
Sometimes pull the handle, sometimes knock politely, and just have a good attitude and a smile, and you'll find that doors open for you.
There we go. And that's the perfect segue into the vintage judging piece, because as you said earlier, you've got to fly around to be considered in that judging contention. Talk to me a little bit about the process and what just the entire process about judging vintage aircraft.
So when I parked my airplane and I registered in the campground, the first question they asked, do you want your aircraft judged? And my immediate reaction is no. It has paint chips missing, it's been modified. It is not anything like the Mooney that rolled off the factory in 1965. And I just knew that if the judges came out and looked at it, that they would just probably hang a red tag on it and say, this plane shouldn't have even flown in. And so hanging out with these guys, I found out that what they're looking for, especially with the antique stuff, they're looking for historical accuracy, the way that it rolled off the line, which is not always the most convenient way to restore an airplane to a readily flyable condition. They're looking at the way that the fabric is attached, the hardware that you use. Even one year they had 2 biplanes that were in contention for winning the Grand Champion Award. And the only difference was the grease fittings on one Stearman, the zerks were pointing up, and the other one, the zerks were pointing down. And it was just the way that they clocked as they tightened them up. It was not an active effort. But that was the only difference that they really found between these 2 airplanes. And so they went back and found historical pictures of Stearmans as they rolled off the production line, and they found which way the grease fittings pointed, and that airplane won Grand Champion that year by 1 point.
Wow. So it's an intense process.
It is.
And people take a lot of pride in the judging of their vintage aircraft, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's there's so many pieces that play between the documentation of the aircraft's history and your efforts to restore it and keep it in that condition, that there's a lot of things being looked at, and a lot of sharp eyes in those judges in the judges' buildings. So you got to know what you bring, and you're not gonna pull the wool over anybody's eyes.
You better be confident about it. We're going to hear from those judges in just a second, but before we get into it, where can people find the vintage planes? Are they smattered all over, or are they in a specific area?
If you take the blue tram from the tram center, it'll take you down around the corner and start down the flight line, and the vintage area is pretty much right where you turn the corner down the flight line. You have vintage in review, and then the vintage camping area beyond that.
Awesome. So we're going to get a look at some of the inside process behind the judging of these vintage aircraft right now.
Michael Hoig, and I judge vintage. It's the antique category, and I've been doing it for about 20-some years now. So,
when you're judging, can you tell us just kind of the big picture of what you're looking for when you first walk up to the airplane and where it goes from there?
Basically, neatness, cleanness, and originality, and workmanship in restoring an airplane.
As you get into it, what are some of the fine details that you're really zeroing in on?
Fabric work and the metal work to bring them back to their original condition as they left the factory. And parts and pieces that are original, and so the airplane is exactly like it was. Antique starts at the Wright Flyer up to the end of World War II, which was August 30th, 1945. And then classics are through 1955, and contemporaries are 55 to 1970.
About how long do you spend judging an aircraft?
We go by, and depending on if it's obviously, like you say, the everyday flyer and everything, why we have a minimum of a 35 vote, and if it's just an old dog that flies good, we say, look at it real close. It don't take 2 minutes, but if it's, the better it looks, the longer we spend, up to maybe 30 minutes or an hour sometimes.
Wow. What is the longest you've spent on an airplane that you can remember?
Overall, adding them up, a couple hours probably, because if you have two that are really close, you have to go back and rejudge those two and see maybe a half a point or something will be the difference in the score.
And can you run us through some of the awards that are awarded? Specifically looking.
We have that right here, and Grand Champion, Reserve Grand, and then Golden Age. These are the categories of the antiques, and those World War II military planes and transport categories, customized and replicas. So that's basically that, and it's in the judging standards book what categories you can get your plane signed up for. We usually sort them out. They just, when they register, it's the year of manufacture, make and model. And then these pictures give us where we can put them up here and go by the scores that the planes each get. Then we can shift them around and get it set so that the awards can be listed and handed out Saturday night.
Great. So it's Saturday night in one thing.
6 o'clock at the vintage hangar.
Great. Well,
so as we know, every airplane has a story, and part of that vintage judging process is about how authentic are you to the original generating story of the airplane, right?
yeah. And it was interesting right along with the judges that we saw in the yellow hats in the video. That was John Pipkin and Joe Kokas. They were not on the audio, but they really gave me some really good insight into the little fine details that you look at to see the authenticity of the way that the aircraft was originally built versus the way that we've made them easier to rebuild and keep flying to this day. And the amount of dedication that goes into a quality restoration to be judged at an event like this.
And that's not to say that the new aircraft are not amazing and that there's not value in those, but there's just something so special about seeing somebody who has spent hours and hours of their life and gosh knows how many dollars on restoring a vintage plane.
Oh, hours and hours is an understatement. Burt Rutan spoke, I think, here in the woods a night or two ago, and he had all the home builders raise their hand and everybody that had built and flown an airplane. He's like, I just want everybody to know that every one of these people who just raised their hands probably dedicated about 1.6 spouses to the cause. So it takes a lot of time and effort away from other things that deserve time and effort. So it's a lot of dedication.
So we're going to run out of time, and we're going to close this piece of Plane and Pilot, our final one for the week. But Jeremy, before we let you go, vintage aircraft that you absolutely love. As you said, you fly your Mooney, and it's a flyer. It's a regular flyer. It's got the chip pane. It's got the well-worn time. It's got the hours on it. What else is one of those favorite pieces that you look at and you're like, I love this airplane?
My heart's split between two others, both biplanes. The Beach Stagger Wing, basically the first corporate jet, absolute beautiful in maroon, and the Booker Youngman, the old German aerobatic trainer biplane. It's the Stradivarius of airplanes, the most delightful flying airplane I've ever handled.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, thank you both for joining us for this whole week of Plane and Pilot. Jeremy, where can people go to find you other than Plane and Pilot?
Well, Plane and Pilot, and also I've got a Substack at wordsaloft.substack.com, and my Instagram is Pasture Pilot, Pasture, like a cow pasture where I used to land, pilot.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for Plane and Pilot. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be back with Mark Cook and the next edition of Kit Planes.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Yeah. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Next. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Trashed.
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Tempest plays a vital role in the industry, and in today's world we are the leading spark plug and oil filter manufacturer for general aviation. We've been able to not only release new products, but we've taken legacy products and created innovations. We take great pride, not only from a design standpoint, but from a manufacturing standpoint, all the way down to making sure the customer is satisfied with the product. Quality, innovation, performance. Tempest.
Hi everybody, Mark Cook with Kit Planes Magazine. We're back with Oshkosh Live at AirVenture 2024 in the Redbird Pavilion. I want to thank Tempest and Avemco for their support of this series, and you for watching this. We've had a fun week, and it continues here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Mosaic program. That's the modernization of special airworthiness certification, something that we at Kit Planes and across the industry have talked about as an opportunity to expand light sport pilot capabilities and certification. I'm here with Ryan Johnson, who in addition to his many roles at Vans Aircraft as chief designer there, is also the chair of the F-37 committee, which is part of the ASTM, which is setting the framework for the certification process. Ryan, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
My first question for you is, where are we on Mosaic?
The recent news is the recent reauthorization bill that just came out from Congress, which mandates 24 months from about last month when that went into effect for the FAA to come out with the final rule. And that's just to give the rule to the public. The FAA, as of yesterday, has indicated they're going to beat that timeline. So that's encouraging. They want to come out with something from the May to Oshkosh timeframe next year, and I feel talking to them that they are on track to make that date. So that's for letting us know what the rule is. Then the next step is standards need to be accepted. So we're writing the consensus standards at ASTM F37 right now. A shout out to anybody who's interested, whether it's a user or somebody with technical experience. We have to be a balanced committee. Reach out and join us or send an email to me. We need more participation there. So we need to write the standards. Those standards will be accepted by the FAA, and that will take 6 to 10 months. So when the rule comes out, the FAA will set a deadline of either 6 to 10 months for the rule to become effective. And when the rule becomes effective, then manufacturers will be able to make airplanes, but also the pilot privileges that have been talked about will go into effect.
So that's quite a process, but I'm really encouraged to hear that the FAA is trying to beat its own deadlines on that, because we've talked a lot about this, and there's sort of the concern in the pilot community that everything seems to take a long time, but to get this through a little bit ahead of schedule is really good.
Right.
So the other thing I understand is we've got some expansions to basic med. How does that impact the Mosaic and the sport pilot issue?
Sure. Currently, it's been in the news, basic med is increasing in its scope. But that's going up the chain of what you can do with the basic med certificate. It's really not changing the base level of what basic med covers. So if before this news you were thinking that, hey, I need a light sport pilot license and I'm looking forward to the expansion of what a light sport airplane could be, you'll still need that light sport pilot's license and look forward to a vastly increased capability of the aircraft that you can fly.
So they really are kind of two separate issues, and it is kind of confusing because they overlap in some key ways, and a lot of private pilots are currently flying on basic med with some of the same benefits. So I think that clarity is really, really helpful.
But looking forward to being allowed to fly at night through endorsement, being able to fly larger aircraft. It's exciting what's coming in light sport.
It does seem like there's a broad easing of some of the rules and regulations that reflect the reality of, basic med has been successful, light sport has been successful, and we're sort of given a little more rope because we've done a good job with it.
Right, and I think a shout out to the FAA in this instance. I was there in May with AOPA at their conference, and you can see throughout the FAA you have real pilots that understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So they understand. They're flying airplanes just like us. They're paying for fuel and paying for maintenance just like us. They're paying for new airplanes just like us. So they get it, so to speak.
That's great. Now I know as part of the Mosaic original proposal, there was a little back and forth on stall speed requirements as well as some of the other specifications in the category. Where do you think we're going to land on the final rule on stall speed?
On stall speed, this is a concern of what gets added to the rule. Currently, we're at 54 VS1, so that's flaps up, and it's fairly limiting. The alphabet groups, as we like to call them, Gamma, AOPA, EAA, have all proposed 58 knots, VS1, but that's still leaving out a large part of the group of aircraft that have flown here into Oshkosh. If we look at the EAB community, about 60% of the aircraft that flew into the show last year, and I assume this week as well, would not qualify. And if we look at the rule that was proposed by the FAA, twice in the first 4 pages, it talks about shifting people further up the safety continuum into the ELSA market from the EAB market, which does have a safety benefit. And if we're going to do that, we need to propose an airplane or bring an airplane to market under those rules at higher stall speeds that's really going to attract people. It's one thing to have an airplane that you want to learn and train in, but that's not necessarily the airplane you want to buy and use. So for the robustness of this market, and I think the FAA is looking at that, we'll see where they come out. They're definitely looking at what's been proposed by the AOPA and EAA and Gamma. We'll see where it falls out. We hope that there is a further expansion though. Currently, primary category established in its preamble that 61 knots VSO was a safe stall speed. And we hope there's a disconnect between if a light sport pilot wants to fly 54, if that side of the FAA is concerned about 54, the hope would be that there could be a higher stall speed for light sport airplanes, and then a light sport pilot, through an endorsement, could fly like a private pilot this expanded LSA. There's a lot to be determined. We won't know for another year.
It does strike me that there is quite the disconnect there, because we've had Part 23 certified aircraft that are 61 knots. Certainly not a safety record associated with, or safety detriment associated with that. And it does seem like a disconnect, especially as we're going to have four-place airplanes, heavier airplanes, faster airplanes. It seemed like, to me, like an artificial sort of closing of the box. So let's hope.
Let's hope, yes.
I like that. So we do have a lot of our kit planes readers obviously are flying and considering and building experimental amateur built aircraft. It's a little complicated where experimental amateur built, ELSA, and Mosaic kind of come together. What should they be thinking about?
I think this is an exciting time for aviation. It's why Van's Aircraft is part of this effort, putting so much effort into the expansion. When we look at ELSA, we've been for years governed by the 51% rule. And there's only so much that a kit manufacturer can do. And the FAA realizes that when more is done by the manufacturer, you have a safer product in the end. And 2 week to taxi even can only go so far. It was a great effort. Michael Vithas now at Van's Aircraft brought that to the market. But we can go further. And to think about home building where there's not a 51% rule, and we can have those critical systems supplied to the customer, where an airplane is delivered with your 4 main manuals, maintenance manual, a POH, flight training supplement, and a production acceptance procedure, so that first flight is defined and safer than it could be in the current world realm. But I think as a kit builder, you'd be looking forward to building an ELSA. And you're not stuck with, once you have it, the airworthiness certificate as an ELSA, you can then do what you want inside the airplane. You could rearrange the panel, add new things to the panel, so the benefits are there.
Without and I hate to say the limitations of the current LSA, because it's a bit of useful box, but certainly benefiting from the expansion of that you would get under Mosaic.
Right. Well, as a private pilot, you could fly it as you wished. Yeah.
So one of the advantages of the experimental amateur built scene has to do with the maintenance and the ability to do your own maintenance, especially if you get the repairman certificate. How does that work in Mosaic?
Currently under the MPRM, maintenance is a gray area. We're hoping that they allow training to get a certification, a training certificate that would allow you to do certain levels of maintenance on your aircraft. And the great part about that, instead of under the 51% rule, one person gets that maintenance certificate and it goes away when the aircraft is sold, that anyone can get that training and do specific operations or maintenance on an aircraft.
And I think we've seen in the LSA category that's been successful, the training requirements.
It has been.
And again, the FAA has been looking at the safety record of LSA. They've been looking at the practical responses to LSA over the last 20 plus years. And this really emboldened us to move forward, emboldened them to consider moving forward.
Equivalent or better safety record than general aviation.
And you know what? That's really what we want anyway, right?
What we all want.
Exactly.
It will expand the industry because people know that they can buy a safe product.
Exactly. So right now we're kind of in the short event horizon as we get to the FAA releasing their rule on Mosaic. But you and I had talked about earlier, this is not necessarily a short-term view. How do you see that?
This is a long-term view. And when we look at Mosaic, currently what's being produced in a flight school is under CAR 3 standards. The 172 was designed under 1960 standards. And because of that, it can still be produced under those standards and it doesn't raise the cost. If you produced a 172 under the current standards, it would be a lot more expensive. And that's why those airplanes are close to or over $1 million. And what's going to happen in 30 years? Are we still going to be producing the same airplanes under that CAR 3 standard? The Model A was 97 years ago. That's going to be 90 years of the same airplane. Are we still giving driver's ed in a Model A? No. So we need to bring new low-cost alternatives to the market, and Mosaic is a great way to do that.
It really does seem to be a good trigger for development, lower cost development. And I think it's an opportunity for some manufacturers who have maybe been in the experimental world and maybe been in the LSA world to come in and, I'm not going to say threaten the Cessnas, but it certainly supplant some of these very old airplanes?
It's a platform on which new technology can easily be introduced to the market. And that's going to bring safety, confidence, and an expansion of what real people can fly in an airplane. And I don't think they should see it as a threat at all. I don't think they do either. And we're all looking forward to the innovation that can be brought into the marketplace.
I agree with you. Ryan, thank you for joining me. I appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
We're really looking forward to next year when the FAA releases the final rule. And then, of course, ASTM has some work to do to look at that rule and figure out some other tweaks. It's not going to be a snap the fingers, but I think this is an important move in the right direction. So from there, we're going to go to another anniversary. So we have an interview with Sebastian Heinz from Zenith. We're going to see how they're doing after 40 years of the 601 design. Hi everybody, Mark Cook again for Kit Planes Magazine. Still here at AirVenture 2024, here with Sebastian Heinz from Zenith Aircraft. So you guys have a bit of a milestone. The 601 celebrates 40 years
40 years this year, yeah. We're excited about that because, you know, I don't consider myself old in the business, but we're
young, we're good, we're good.
I know, but 40 years, so it's kind of an honor for us, you know, and of course it's my dad that started all this, so, and, you know, he passed away a few years ago, but it's an honor for us to be able to continue on with that, so it's neat for us to be here celebrating that, absolutely.
It's kind of interesting to consider. I mean, you guys have been hugely successful. Tons of airplanes, I mean, the 701, the 750 have been really successful for you guys. It started from an idea for a simple lightweight airplane and kind of grew from that. What do you remember from that period? I mean, you were around, you were part of that development process with your dad.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because you're absolutely right, especially the 80s, you know. I think home builds kind of, you know, that was kind of their growth period. We had a lot of new stuff coming out. And, you know, and I remember well in the 80s, my dad, you know, I was young and the all-metal airplanes, they were kind of the old way of doing things. And I remember people saying, you know, composites where it's at, spam cans is not. And I remember talking to my dad and kind of saying, you know, shouldn't we be looking at composites? And he was really saying how metal was still the way to do it. And a lot of it was the empirical data, you know, fatigue life and so forth. You know, he was a structural engineer guy, so he really looked at that. And he stuck to it. And now, of course, 40 years later, we see all the popular airplanes are all metal. And so I'm so grateful that my dad didn't listen to me, if you will. And the more we work with metal and the more we continue to work with metal, the more I like it, because the CNC manufacturing, of course, is where it really has you know, come into its own, if you will, because we can do so much more now with final hole size, match drilled parts and assemblies that it really has made all metal aircraft again a really good way of building things. And so, you know, we've been doing this for 40 plus years and still doing it and doing it easier to build and quicker to build and so forth. So I love that.
And I think that sort of parallels where the builders have kind of come to you in the sense that the modern desire is for a simple kit that goes together easily, repeatably, with all the parts taken care of. And I know you guys have done a lot on the manufacturing side to make that possible. What's changing? I know you guys are expanding a little bit. What's happening at the factory?
Well, at the factory, you know, we continue to do what we do is, you know, build the kits. And of course, our kits are getting to be quicker and easier to build, and our volume goes up. You know, nice thing, you know, one thing, you know, especially since COVID and so forth, you know, the supply side has really taught us to really keep things in-house, vertically integrated as much as possible. And so we're focusing on that, and that's one of the reasons for our expansion is not only to be able to do more of what we're doing, but also to do more of the kit in-house.
The 750 has been a huge success for you guys. Is that your #1 seller these days?
Still today, absolutely. Okay. We've got the 750 Stoll, we have the 750 Super Duty, which is right behind us. We have the 750 Cruiser, which I flew down here yesterday. So yeah, it's really a nice product line. Within that, it meets the light sport category, and then even the Super Duty with Mosaic, very much ready for that. So I think it really is a good design for the amateur builder, the amateur pilot, and still a very capable light aircraft.
Well, I think it's exciting to see sort of the through line from what your dad did in the original designs. so much of sort of his design ethos is still in the airplane, but it's rendered in a way that's modern manufacturing. It's in that way, it's kind of the best of both worlds, taking what he had in mind and just bringing it into the modern world.
And I love hearing that, because that's exactly what he's done, I think. And for us as the next generation doing this, it's an honor for us to do that. And I'm thankful to him all the time, because I see we're just taking what he started and we're taking it to the next level. But he's made our job easy, because it's what he started with such a good design. So, and that's whether it's a 600 series, or now with the 650, or the Soul airplanes.
So Zenith is out here in the home-built display area, booth 610. We'll have the airplanes you see here on display. Come by and ask you guys a bunch of questions. They're happy to answer.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And welcome back. I'm here with Paul Dye, my predecessor and editor-at-large now at Kit Planes. Paul is one of the most experienced pilots I know, and has flown a whole ton of different airplanes. We're going to talk about a technology that I'm pretty excited about, because I'm kind of a late joiner, but I'm loving it, and that's AOA, or angle of attack flying. It's a technology that is available in a lot of EFISs now, and that is really starting to gain some ground, I think. What's your feel on it?
So one of the interesting things is people think of AOA as this new technology. Well, the technology to display it is kind of new and to give it to the pilot, but it's been around forever. I mean, the Wright brothers has an AOA indicator. Wolfgang Langweis in 1944 wrote about it in Stick and Rudder and said, this is the only way to fly. But there was no good way to show it to the pilot. Now, every EFIS out there has AOA capability native to the software. All you have to do is calibrate it and make it work. So I'm on an EAA safety subcommittee to promote the use of AOA. One of the things that we did was we got Redbird to program it into their simulators, their Cessna 172 model, and we've been flying the heck out of it up at the Pilot Proficiency Center, teaching instructors how to fly it. Now, that sounds ominous, teaching them, it takes 4 minutes to teach somebody how to fly AOA, and they're doing it like a pro.
So I'm curious about that, since you're showing this to people who are probably aware of it, but they've never actually used it themselves. What's their first reaction to it?
It's incredible. It's like they go, where has this been all my life? Because you can literally take and fly, now, to either tone, we really like the tone, but let's talk about the display. You can fly it right up to the red bar just below the stall, and once you get there, you can go ahead and roll the airplane to knife edge flight one side, you can roll it back to knife edge flight the other side. As long as the wing is flying, you have control. And as long as you have control, you can put the airplane wherever you want it.
So let's spool that back a little bit. I think to be clear about it, we're so used to looking at an airspeed indicator.
Right.
AOA is a completely different animal.
Right. So
how does airspeed and AOA get coupled?
So the problem with airspeed is that the airspeed indicator lies when it comes to the stall. Because your stall, there is no such thing as a stall speed. There's a stall angle of attack, and depending upon the G load that you're putting on the airplane, which can be done by bank or by pulling, your stall speed will be different. So, you get to a 60-degree bank, the stall speed's way, way up there. You don't have to remember any of that. All you have to remember is that the AOA never lies. When it gets red at the top, it's going to stall. At the top bar, it's going to stall. Or when it gets really, 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 really anxious in your ear, it's going to go ahead and stall. So as long as you keep that frenetic level down a little bit and keep the bars down lower, the wing is flying. You're in good shape.
So you've been flying with AOA for some time. Walk me through sort of a flight. How do you practically use AOA indications in flight?
So the first thing you do is on takeoff, you can fly it on what we call the green donut, which is really the best lift you can get out of the wing. And if you're at that point and the engine fails, you're not that far from, you just keep that best AOA. You're going to have to pitch over pretty well, and you can put the airplane in a safe spot and land it at absolutely the slowest speed. If that means you take the wings off on trees, great, no problem. But you're going to do that so slowly that you're not going to get killed. On landing, when you're on a hot, high, heavy case, we always talk about the base to final turn, turning in here to Oshkosh with the biggest load you ever carry, right? It's not going to lie. You can tighten up the turn until the AOA is below stall, and you're not going to stall the airplane. It's absolutely fabulous. Now, we use it on approach as well, but that's not quite so important. What's really great is when you're doing a lot of maneuvering, especially low altitude maneuvering, There's a great story of a pretty prominent pilot who was busy up in the backcountry circling into land, and he was looking at an eagle's nest in a tree, and it was fascinating him. And all of a sudden the thing started chirping in his ear, and he realized he'd pulled too tight. He relaxed the back pressure and was able to land safely.
Without ever looking inside the airplane?
Without ever looking inside the airplane. That's what we like about the audio portion of these AOAs, because you're not looking at this thing on the, you're never looking at the panel. You're not really looking at the glare shield. You're looking out here, or if it's right pattern, you're looking out here.
So we know, from student pilot days, that the airspeed indicator lies in different ways, from density, altitude to angle of attack and all of that. Do you have to compensate for AOA indications in any way?
Nope. The AOA is always going to tell you the truth. And the neat thing here, we talk about student pilots, Mosaic is probably going to end up, most Mosaic airplanes will probably have AOA in them, and that's going to be the training fleet of the future. We're working hard with the FAA to make AOA training part of the curriculum. If the airplane is equipped with it, you'll be tested on it, and you're going to find that you can fly better in shorter number of hours using AOA than you will with anything else.
Because you kind of don't have to do the mental calculations.
You don't have to do any mental calculations. It just works.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
So, unlike an airspeed indicator system, that you, as a pilot or a builder, you don't really do any calibration. I understand there is a calibration process.
So you do have to calibrate your AOA, and that involves going out and doing a stall, which not all private pilots do full stalls nowadays, but that's okay. Somebody at your airport that can fly your airplane can do that stall that AOA calibration if you want. But basically, it means you're going to do a straight ahead stall, let it break. And most of the systems now, you don't even have to punch a button at the stall. It records where the stall happened.
So it kind of walks you through it. It's paying attention while you're flying the airplane.
All you have to do is fly the airplane, and it'll go ahead and do it for you. So you want to make sure your AOA is calibrated. If you have it, and you have the pitot tube that's appropriate for it, and they're pretty cheap if you didn't get one, go ahead and do the calibration, and now you have a life-saving device on every flight.
So I think it's fair to say that certainly in the experimental world, all of the modern EFISs have this capability built in?
Yeah, all the modern EFISs have the capability, have the software. They work just a little different than each other, but basically the rule is if it sounds frenetic, you're getting close to danger. If it gets red, you're getting close to danger. If it's getting green or very calming tones, you're in good shape.
I like calming tones when I'm flying.
I like calming tones, yeah.
So if you don't have an EFIS in your airplane, or if you don't have a modern home built, what are your options for having AOA in the airplane?
Good question. There are a lot of standalone AOA systems that you can buy. I was just talking to Mark at Alpha Systems. He's got some great systems out there. AFS builds a standalone system. There are other standalone systems out there. Garmin will sell you a standalone system. So I think Bendix King still has one. They used to have one. I'm not sure if they're still doing it. And one of the neat things is that if you're flying a certified airplane, the FAA makes installing this critical safety device extremely simple. You don't need a full STC. You don't need a whole lot of paperwork. You can just go ahead and install it.
So we're talking about certified aircraft versus experimental aircraft.
Right.
The technology is the same, correct?
Technology is the same. That's right. It's just, it's harder to add things to a certified airplane without paperwork.
Right.
Experimental, you can add anything you want anytime you want.
Right.
Yeah, I've flown some systems. I've probably flown 30-some of the 40 systems that are on the market.
Yeah.
All of my airplanes have at least 2 systems installed, not because I need 2 systems, but because I'm a media person, so I've been testing them.
Yeah.
And so they just stay in so I can compare them with each other, and they all work great.
Yeah. So it's basically a fundamentally simple system, right?
Incredible.
It's looking at two air sources and comparing them.
Right. And there are systems out there that don't use any air data.
Yes.
They're computing the platform is computing the difference between the flight path angle and the various angles that you've got, the angle to the deck, and it's actually giving what we call a derived AOA. They're okay. They're not as good as a sensed AOA, but they're better than nothing.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you a question that takes you back to your previous job. I understand that there's some very large vehicles that have been flown very, very high that use AOA extensively. How did that work in the shuttle?
Yeah, the AOA in the shuttle, we basically used a derived AOA, until we got down to about Mach 3 where we put out our air data probes. The reason we didn't put them out earlier is because you didn't want to melt them off, right? I mean, they were going to melt off if you put them out any faster. And then we used AOA as a primary means of control. We also used the derived AOA up high doing entry, during the hot part of entry, to make sure we didn't melt the wings off or we didn't fall into the sky and get captured too early. Yeah. So AOA is a primary flight control system in spacecraft. So, you know, be an astronaut, put AOA in your airplane.
So clearly, you know, most of the astronaut corps had some military training, and certainly back in the day.
Right.
So to get them over the hump of understanding how AOA worked, I mean, most military aircraft use that primary as well, so there's part of that training.
They use it from day one.
Yeah.
In most airplanes, they use it from day one. And I mean, it's just primary way to fly.
Absolutely. So now we have the challenge of getting people who are trained on airspeed to do that. What do you think, besides like demonstrating, what do you think like the core tactics are for getting them over the hump?
Right now, what we're doing is we're trying to get the instructor corps around the country to fly it. And I have yet to get anybody who actually flew our demo who said, "Oh, I really hate that. That's terrible. I'd never use that." Every single one of them goes, "Where has this been all my life? This is awesomely cool, and I'm going to teach all my students about it." And then we just start making it an accepted fact that you have it in your plane.
Yeah.
That's it. It's cultural.
And then you use it every day in flight, and it just integrates into your scan, your audio scan, your visual scan.
Right, absolutely. It's there all the time. I like to use the example of ADS-B. When we were kind of forced into putting ADS-B in all our airplanes. Now I know pilots who, if their ADS-B in isn't working, they won't fly. And we're only talking about 4 years since the mandate happened. So I think once people fly with it, they're going to get very excited about how much more margin it gives them.
Absolutely.
And I use it all the time in test flying. Generally, I'll calibrate the AOA on a second flight of a new airplane, and I use it all the time.
So that's actually a good point, because in your work, and you know, you do a lot of phase one flight testing. Yep. You do a lot of, and in some airplanes that are a new design, or at least they're still figuring it out. Once that is calibrated, how valuable is that for part of phase one, and particularly to get comfortable with a new design?
It's very, very comfortable, especially when you're doing aerobatics, or when you're just doing steep turn type stuff, accelerated stalls. You have a much better idea of how close you are to the stall before you get there, so you can start feeling out what the airplane is trying to tell you. So very, very valuable.
I would think too that, you know, in a new design, when you're trying to figure out how the stall progresses, what does it do in the stall? Does it drop a wing? Does it give you any warning?
Yeah, you want to sneak up on it.
So that's like going, okay, we're getting close. Start sitting upright.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think too, especially aerobatics, anything with the wing loaded. Yep. That's got to be a huge, huge benefit.
It is. I do it all the time. I do a lot of aerobatics at altitude where I live, much higher than where I learned aerobatics at sea level, right?
Yeah.
And it's really nice having that AOA telling me, you know, you're pulling a little hard in this loop right now, because you just don't have the air density that we do down lower.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate your time today. I will add a plug that I've recently started flying with AOA. I wasn't so much skeptical as I thought, okay, well, I've been flying okay for a long time using airspeed. I know my airplane really, really well. And I installed the system, calibrated it, and sort of gave myself a self-lesson on it. One day I was a little tight on the base to final turn, trying to suck it in, and I'm looking outside and I hear the AOA start to come alive. And I looked down at the airspeed and I thought, if I hadn't had it, I would have thought I had plenty of airspeed. It was a real wake-up call. So I'm with you and all the instructors that went, hey, this is a really good thing.
Really
I wish
cool.
I had had it. So. Yep. Well, Paul, thanks again for joining us. Thank you for watching. Appreciate support from Avemco and Tempest on this project. And we've enjoyed being here this week. Thanks for watching.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Yeah. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Tempest Aero Group is a leading general aviation marketing and distribution company that has partnered with some of the best brands in the industry, including Tempest, Alcor, Marvel Schebler, Precision Air Motive, Consolidated Fuel Systems, and Stratus Tool Technologies. These brands represent high-quality aviation components and tools for OEM and aftermarket applications.
Quality, innovation, performance. Tempest.
Hello everyone and welcome live to Oshkosh Live at Airventure 2024. Yesterday we got a little bit of rain, but we did not get the monsoon that everybody was expecting, so it's nice and dry on the field today. Sunny, a beautiful day to be at Oshkosh. Beautiful day to be a pilot, and our first guest today is somebody who can tell you everything about learning to become a pilot. Inducted into the Flight Instructors Hall of Fame, and somebody that just everybody knows as the instructor of record for Airventure. It's Doug Stewart, and Doug, congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much, Russ.
Instructing is a big deal right now. We need pilots. We need a lot of pilots, and I got to say, from what I'm hearing, we're not doing a very good job of filling that void. I've heard the term puppy mill used. I've heard young United captain say that he just basically assumes he's flying a single pilot when he has one of these new kids coming into the cockpit. What the heck is going on?
Well, we do have a major problem, a very serious one. There is a big demand for pilots. There are companies, and I won't mention any names, but there are companies that are pushing pilots through as quickly as they can. And thanks to the Congress and the accident back in Buffalo, there's now a requirement that they have to have 1,500 hours in order to become an ATP. The only way they can build that time is in an instructor. But these people are being pushed through by these big schools, all of them typically Part 141, to do this as quickly as they can. And their time that they spend in the right seat as an instructor is quite often spent texting their buddies on their phone. They don't let their learners truly learn. The only kind of teaching they can do is to teach to the rote level, which is merely memory, no understanding. If we don't understand, how do we apply? If we can't apply, how do we correlate? And their training has been going on this way for several years, and it's the blind leading the blind. There's no experience. As an example, I can test a flight instructor initial applicant. Their only time in the airplane by themselves, solo, 10 hours. And we can thank the FAA for that one because they've made rules that allow this to happen. They can log time for their commercial, as an example, their long distance cross country, performing the duties of pilot in command with a flight instructor sitting in the right seat. So that if anything happens, you have the airplane, they scream. How do we build confidence? How do we build being in charge of that flight? How do we build truly being pilot in command when the regulations have been written that someone can get to a flight instructor with only 10 hours in the cockpit by themselves? To me, it's criminal.
But the new training doctrine says that you train for the role, you train for the job. And that you don't need all this stick and rudder stuff. You need to know how to operate the systems, and you need to know how to fit into the system. The stick and rudder is not all that it's cracked up to be. What do you say?
I totally disagree with it. When we talk about the rules of learning,
or the laws of learning. The law of primacy is the most important one. The things you learn first are the things that are going to stick with you. If you don't have to be responsible, if you don't have to pay attention, if you don't have to be in the moment, what are you going to do when the captain keels over and you're the FO sat there in the right seat that don't know how to fly an airplane? Literally do not know how to fly an
Has it reached that point where we're getting FOs that do not know how to fly an airplane?
I hate to say it. You spoke to a captain the other day. There's a young man here now, somewhere floating around Oshkosh, who is now an FO, had been a captain for one of the regionals, now an FO flying an Airbus. And he tells me what he's seeing. This is someone I trained. He knows how to fly an airplane. What does he do on his days off?
Flies airplanes.
He flies airplanes. Kids come to me for a practical test. I always want to find out, tell me a little bit about yourself. What brought you to aviation? Get them to relax. This is going to be an anxiety-ridden time for them with me as an examiner. Many of these kids say, when I was a kid, my parents took me to Disneyland. I got to see the cockpit. The captain brought me in. I'm going to college now. I don't know what I want to do. I'll become a pilot. I can travel and make a lot of money. And Russ, I am not making this up. I wish the other day I had an applicant come in, and that's exactly what he said to me. It was like, I've been saying this, but I wish I had recorded it.
Okay, well, the travel part's accurate.
Travel part's accurate. But it's not, I want to fly an airplane. And I don't care what I do, as long as I can get 1,000 feet between my buns and the ground on a daily basis, right, and not have to pay for it.
Okay, so what do we do? It seems like we have a three-pronged problem. We got an industry that is hungry to fill that pipeline. We've got unscrupulous flight training schools who are luring kids in, often lending them hundreds of thousands of dollars to take the flying lessons, and we got a bunch of disinterested kids. What do we do?
One of the ways is to start changing the way we teach. And there is a process actually going on here at Oshkosh this week at the Pilot Proficiency Center. And in fact, Aviation Safety Briefing, the quarterly magazine that the FAA does, I don't know if you folks can focus in on this, but Rich Stoll has come up with a new way of teaching to get beyond rote learning. And it's teaching 9 principles of flying. It's teaching about optimal learning. It's changing the way we train pilots so that they are almost forced through the training to start thinking for themselves, to start processing information, to get beyond that rote. Why are you doing this? I have applicants come to me and I'll say, well, example, okay, when you do your mag checks, I'll observe at a practical test, and quite often they do 1 click to the left mag, 1 click back to both, 2 clicks to the left to the right mag, back to both. And I say, well, that's okay as far as the airplane. We're finding out both mags, proper drops, proper differential, okay? But I'd suggest you do it the other way. Now, if they just go home and tell their instructor, well, Doug Stewart said do it the other way, it's rote knowledge because I haven't told them the why. The important part of this, why should you do it this way? So that you don't, short story, you don't inadvertently take off on just that left mag in a Cessna 150 on a low pressure, hot, high density altitude day and wonder why the airplane's only climbing at 200 feet per minute. We have to teach the why, and that is not being done. That is being missed right now in this rush to get to the right seat of the cockpit.
So what don't new pilots understand? They don't understand how the engine works. They don't understand how the pitot-static works. They don't get any of that?
They don't understand anything. And many of these instructors don't even let their clients solo because they can't build time while their learner is out learning how to fly an airplane by themselves, building pilot in command authority.
I have been horrified to find students with 35 and 40 hours and they haven't soloed yet.
And quite often, because the instructor doesn't want to let them solo, they want to take them on cross country. They want to take them on night. They want to do all this other stuff so they can log their hours, not thinking about the learner. They're not there for the learner. They're there for themselves. I hate to say it, but that's what I am seeing on almost a daily basis.
Are you seeing any hope for change?
Yes, I am, and it's right here.
Right. Yeah, but I mean among the kids that you see.
Okay, we do have a problem there as well, okay? A lot of these kids don't learn the way you and I learn. I don't know about you, but I read. Yeah. I didn't have YouTubes, okay? And even if we used YouTubes, which is a wonderful thing, hey, a picture's worth 1,000 words. 1,000 YouTubes is, a YouTube is worth 1,000, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Picture worth 1,000, yeah, okay. But when you send them to a YouTube, a good YouTube, something from UND, Embry-Riddle, whatever, there's always a list of all this garbage on the right-hand side that they can go look at.
Right.
The way the kids learn is different. We, as old instructors, have to learn how to teach these kids in a way that they will actually learn and take an interest and be motivated to learn more. The learning never stops. I'm this short of 17,000 hours total time. I've got more than 13,500 hours of dual given. Do I know it all? Hell no. I deal with imposter syndrome. I'm worried that everybody watches is going to find out that it's all smoke and mirrors. He doesn't know what he's talking about because I know I have so much more to learn. Some of it is how do we teach these kids to get them to go beyond the rote learning.
Okay, we don't want to leave on that note.
Okay.
Tell me
Positive word.
Tell me about the gems that you've met. We've got a minute left. Tell me about the gems that you are training now or that you've seen in the last year. The kids that get it.
Every once in a while, I will have a client that shows up. They're excited about it. They really want to fly. They're not sure that they want to go to the airlines. They come to me, I'm not really sure what I want to do. I want to make a living as a pilot, but I don't really care what I do. I just need to get 1,000 feet between my buns and the ground on a daily basis, and I don't have to pay for it. And I do have some applicants like that. They're the exception, not the rule, but when I get them, it makes my day.
It makes my heart thump. And I want to thank you very much for coming in and congratulate you again on that great award. It's well deserved. And now we're going to go to our cool plane of the day, and it's a P-40N. It's done up in the colors of Tex Hill of the Flying Tigers, and that was a squadron that really wasn't a squadron in China during the Second World War. They called themselves the American Volunteer Group. Beautiful airplane. Not a brand new restoration, but a very well maintained restoration. Let's go have a look at it.
Hi, I'm Mike Anderson. I am the current president of EAA Warbirds of America, and I flew the P-40N for the show, and this is a P-40N model. The aircraft had 6 50 caliber machine guns on it. They could also hang, bomb off the bottom of it if they wanted to. But predominantly this plane was used by the AVG before we got into the war in World War II by the American Volunteer Group, which basically the Chinese government paid our pilots, they were mercenaries, to go, and they bought the P-40s, and the AVG, they were paid to go fight the Japanese before we got into the war. The big scoop and the cowling in the front of the P-40, those big openings in front, the top 2 big openings are the radiators. So it has 2 copper radiators, and then below it in the center is the oil cooler. So that's how you keep it cool, is air is forced through those radiators to keep it cool when you're flying. So the landing gear is unique how it folds up. Most retractable landing gears just folds up into the wheel wells. Well, on the P-40, they actually turn and go back and go up, like that, instead of coming like that. So they actually turn, and then they go up, and it's electric over hydraulic. So you have an electric motor in the back that runs the hydraulic pump that does it. The original P-40s also had an electric prop. So you change the pitch of the prop with an electric motor. You had basically a toggle switch that changed the pitch of the prop, which changed your RPM. This P-40 is painted up like the Tex Hill aircraft, another famous Flying Tiger. Had 8.5 kills. Eventually, retired from the Air Force and everything else. But probably other than Claire Chenault, the leader of the Flying Tigers, probably Tex Hill was probably the second most famous person in the Flying Tigers. So if you're at Oshkosh here at AirVenture 2024, come by the Phillips 66 booth. The P40 is on display here, and we want to thank Phillips 66 for their help and continued support with oil, and they support the Commemorative Air Force. Without these great supporters, we couldn't keep these airplanes flying. So we really want a big thanks to Phillips 66.
Welcome back live to AirVenture 2024. Now, sometimes you have to be kind of flexible when you're on live TV. And about 45 minutes ago, this woman and I met literally in the parking lot. And she followed us in our golf cart to where she was going. And then she mentioned who she was. I'd like you to meet Victoria Yeager, and if the Yeager name rings a bell, it rings a bell for the right reason. Victoria, tell us about your life with General Chuck.
Thank you, Russ, for having me on. It's been great. I was with him for 21 years, almost 21 years, and every moment was just wonderful. It was an adventure, or we were laughing. I mean, our arguments lasted 5 minutes, or then I'd be rolling on the floor laughing and saying, wait, I was angry about something. What was it? So it was really great. And after he passed away, just to spend some time, and as Chuck would have said, kept me out of the bars, I wrote 2 books. One is 101 Chuck Yeagerisms. It's actually 131, but
show us the books.
That doesn't make a good title, 130. So there's 101, and things like first time I saw a jet, I shot it down. And he followed that jet that was much, much faster. He followed him to where he was landing. So he had his gear down and his flaps down, so he was going much more slowly, and he shot him down. And as Chuck would say, unsportsmanlike, but what the hell. And then he actually...
So that was an ME-262 during Second World War. And the ME-262s were the scourge of the skies for American fighter pilots. Chuck found a way.
Chuck found a way. And then he laughed about it because he had to then, his only egress was to go down the runway. And the Germans were then shooting at him, but they were going over his canopy and shooting themselves in the foot. So then he went straight up and away, and everybody said, why didn't you take a second pass? And never make a second pass, because that's when they know you're there, right? And then I wrote another book. It actually was about 1,200 pages, but it's okay. I whittled it down to under 400 in big print, actually. But it's about our life together. It's short stories, so it's really easy to read, and it's a lot of fun. So it's also got some more Chuck Yeagerisms. One of my favorite was he had fired everybody. They were kind of stealing and taking advantage. So he had me do about 5 different jobs. And about once a month, I'd have a meltdown. And one time I said, oh my gosh, I am so tired of this Chuck Yeager business. And he looked at me and said, you? I'm always Chuck Yeager. And I thought, you got a point there, my friend. And then I just got these. I'm kind of excited about these T-shirts. This is the first time I saw a jet, I shot it down. And you can see the P-51 is shooting down the ME-262, as you say. And then there's another one, and it was a bunch of kids that had me do this one. It's the X1, and it's not bragging if you can do it. It's not bragging if you can do it. That's also in the book. But I'll tell you, he taught me how to fly, so it's pretty exciting when
Can you imagine having Chuck Yeager as your flight instructor?
Well, I had to have a regular one that was licensed for civilians, but he came to every lesson. I went to him and I said, I want to learn how to fly, and I want you to support me in this. I mean, for the first 8 years, everybody'd say, why aren't you learning to fly? I said, well, I have a chauffeur. But then I thought it'd be some kind of stupid if I outlived him and didn't know how to fly. So one time, we're coming in, and he's just about to land, and the wind picks us up and takes us towards the trees. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to hurt? And then he cobs it. And we're going faster. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to hurt more. Well, he was getting, as all you pilots know, he was getting airflow over the wings and getting control, and he brought it back and landed it beautifully. And he was so calm, cool, and collected. He's the only pilot in a small airplane that I wouldn't get sick. But we were driving about 45 minutes later, and he said, well, I ran out of aileron. And for you non-pilots, that means turning ability. So he had to cob it to get better ability to do that. One of my favorite stories, which is in the new book, is we were in Afghanistan. It took me 11 years to convince the DOD that the troops would like to see Chuck Yeager. And so they finally agreed, and they put it out to all the air bases in Kuwait and Afghanistan, and they all wanted him. So she said, can he do 16-hour days? He was 89. I said, better than you or I. And so we go over there. We land in Kuwait. We'd been in France where he'd been shot down, visiting with some of the Maquis who were still alive. And we land there, and nobody's there to meet us. I'm thinking, is Kuwait City safe? Do I just get a hotel? What do we do? What's our backup? Well, they finally came 2 hours later. We go to the Army base. The next morning, we go and we visit a lot of the bases in Kuwait. Started about 7:30, came back about 10:30 at night, and then they told us, and then we went to get something to eat. They told us we had to be ready at 1 a.m. 1 a.m. we go down to the airport. We wait till 4:30 for the pilots, and we fly. They say we're going to Kabul. Well, we land and we get out, and it says Kandahar. It's like, that's not Kabul. So we wait for 4 hours because we're not where we're supposed to be. Another plane comes, and it's a C-141. We get into that. Chuck's in the navigator seat. We have a pilot and a co-pilot, and we take off, and Chuck says, where are we going? And they look at each other, oh, this old man, he doesn't. And I said, I come out of my shoes because I'm in the back bench, and you don't do that. And I said, look, they said we're going to Kabul. You don't spell it Kandahar. And so where are we going now? It may change, but right now, where are we going? And they said, oh, sorry, man, sorry. Mazi Sharif. So then another 20 minutes go by, and Chuck Yeager yells out, brake! And they said, what? He said, brake! And they said, which way? And he said, anyway, it's coming right at you. So they do this big old wing over, and once we're straight and level again, another plane is going the other direction, is right where we had just been. And the pilots were rattled. We were all a little rattled. Not Chuck, though. He was calmly watching all this. And about 20 minutes later, when they all calmed down a little bit, he said, don't you guys look out the window? I mean, this is a no radar site. This is, a war zone. So.
Well, Chuck always said that one of his greatest assets was his eyesight, right?
Absolutely. They only measured to 2010. They didn't go any more, but I'm sure it was more like 27 until the day he died, actually.
Let's talk a little bit more about your life together. You met him on a hiking trail in the desert, right?
In Nevada County.
Nevada County, yeah.
And we're right near the oldest single-span wooden-covered bridge in the country, is from 1862. Anyway, I had gone out there because I had a deal with one of the networks, and they're already trying to cheat me, and I thought, wait a minute. But it's still a lot of money. So
you were a young actress, right?
I was a producer.
Oh, a producer,
yeah,
okay.
because I have an MBA from Columbia. So I was out there, and I was trying to clear my head. It's a beautiful day, spring day. The sun was shining. The mountain flowers were out. And I'm walking up this, that I had been on it for 2 years, hiking that trail. And down comes this man with, the sun was behind him. It was almost like a halo. And I said, hey, great day. And he said, I just got back from Australia. And I said, well, I just got back from Africa. What were you doing in Australia? And he said, I was teaching software. I said, I need a new job. I need to refill the coffers. I was volunteering. Can you get me a job? I said, no, I'm not a software guy. I'm a fighter pilot. I'm Chuck Yeager. I was thinking, oh my God, is that a common name in the military? Was he the Chuck Yeager? Who was Chuck Yeager? I'm thinking all these thoughts. And then I said, okay, you won't get me a job. Will you take me in a fighter jet? And he said, no, that costs tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars. And I said, well, I pay taxes. And he said, I gotta go. And he starts walking down the hill. And I said, okay, you won't get me a job. You won't take me in a fighter jet. You want to go hiking tomorrow? And he turns around and goes, looks at his watch and says, it's 3 o'clock. That's my truck down there. It's got an X1 on it. Do you know what that is? I said, oh my God, I used to be so good at school. And he said, broke the sound barrier. I was like, oh, that's right, that's you. I saw the movie. And he said, what movie? I said, The Right Stuff. All righty then. He walks down a little bit more, and he said, wait a minute. I was like, okay, what now? And he said, I'm older than you. You can't go too fast. And I said, well, we're 50 feet from the start of the trail. You think I stopped to talk to you? No, I'm tired. And we met the next day, and that was we were together ever after.
Well, I'm sure that you needed the right stuff to keep up with General Chuck for the balance of your time together, and it's been really a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Nice talking with you, Russ.
Thanks so much for coming on, Victoria.
Appreciate it.
So now back to some serious stuff. We've been talking a lot about fuel at Airventure, and one way to solve the unleaded fuel crisis is to not use gasoline, to use Jet-A. It's in much better supply around the world. Continental has embraced that. We told you yesterday about them coming up with a retrofit for 206s. Yesterday we went and had a look in detail at the CD300 Jet-A engine. It's going to help with a lot of situations, especially in areas where avgas isn't available. Let's have a look at the Continental CD300.
I'm Larry Anglisano reporting for AvWeb and Aviation Consumer here at AirVenture 2024 in Oshkosh. Big news over at the Continental engine booth is a CD300 Jet-A engine with a planned EASA and STC approval in 2025 for the Cessna 206 Station Air. And let's learn a little bit more about this engine.
All right, well, you're here with Continental Aerospace Technologies. My name is James Foster, and we're just going to do a quick tour around the CD300 engine here. This is a FADEC-controlled 300 horsepower Jet-A diesel engine. It is a twin turbo. It has a gear reduction. It has our own proprietary home-built constant speed unit on the gearbox, so we don't have an external prop governor. We do have an accessory pad that is an ISO pad that is industry standard, so you can put potentially future accessories on there, like maybe a vacuum pump or potentially a prop and prop governor combination if you wanted to. It is a twin turbo, and each turbo is actually controlling the boost pressure in the manifolds for each bank of cylinders. So it is a V6 configuration. It is a FADEC, so a full authority digital engine control engine. It is liquid cooled. And it is a very efficient engine. We are burning around 10 to 14 gallons an hour. It is a 300 horsepower, but it is 270 horsepower continuous, but it puts out enough foot-pounds of torque to compete with our 300 horsepower plus avgas engines. We have twin alternators, and what's nice about this particular configuration is not only is one alternator good for driving the electrical demands of the aircraft, but we can have a second alternator that in some installations is used to power the air conditioning units, and so you can control the air conditioning on and off by just simply turning your alternators on and off. It is liquid cooled, belt driven, so we have a water pump on the back of the engine. This is a high pressure common rail fuel injected system. So we have multiple redundancies in the fuel system. So we have a volume control valve that's controlling the volume of fuel that is pumped into the high pressure pump. We have a pressure relief valve or a rail control valve that we're using as a redundant feature to that solenoid valve to control the pressure in the rail, as well as we have a spring in there, and this is a fail to run state. So if there is a failure within those previous two valves, you still have this to fail to run, and you'll be able to land under power. So there's a few different features. There's a low pressure pump here that is feeding our high pressure pump. We have a thermostat for the cooling system. One other advantage of this particular engine is that it is not using exhaust for your cabin heat. We use our thermostat and our water and use that temperature to control the temperature of the cabin air, so you don't have things like carbon monoxide poisoning risks or things like that. So it's a much safer engine to operate. It is full authority digital engine control. We have two fully functioning ECUs, and so there's always going to be that redundancy. If an issue arises on one ECU, it will automatically switch to the other ECU to continue the operation of the aircraft. And in a lot of cases, a pilot won't have any idea performance-wise other than an indication on the G1000 that there is an issue with one of the ECUs. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're looking at as far as this engine goes, and we're looking forward to some of the applications that it will be going in the future. Go for it. So one of the exciting announcements that we've had at this year's Oshkosh is the announcement by APIS that they're developing an STC for the Cessna 206 aircraft. And one of the exciting things about that for this particular engine flying in that airframe is that airframe is used widely in areas around the world where avgas is no longer really available. And as a result, going to a Jet-A burning engine such as the CD300, these operators now have an option to continue to operate those airframes in areas that are not necessarily favorable for fuel cost and things like that. So it's going to be a very exciting application to see develop. It's because it's going to open the doors for people to continue to operate those workhorse aircraft in areas where it just really isn't feasible anymore with an avgas fuel. So the only other application we have right now with our OEM Diamond is that we have this engine, the CD300, and the Diamond DA50 aircraft. And we're excited about that. It's been announced for several years already, and we actually have a bunch of them flying already. We're very proud of this engine because it was part of an earth rounding project with some gentlemen flew the DA50 around the world, and this engine flew approximately 275 flight hours without a single engine squawk. So we've already seen early on in its life just the reliability and the efficiencies that we were getting out of it in that application. So if you want to see it in the air and flying it, you need to check out the Diamond DA50.
It's happening. Okay, it's happening. Let's go. It's happening. Let's go. Get the bag. Get the bag. Get. What?
Life's better when you're prepared, especially on the flight deck. Find a Redbird near you and fly like you've been there before.
Tempest Aero Group is a leading general aviation marketing and distribution company that has partnered with some of the best brands in the industry, including Tempest, Alcor, Marvel Schebler, Precision Air Motive, Consolidated Fuel Systems, and Stratus Tool Technologies. These brands represent high-quality aviation components and tools for OEM and aftermarket applications.
Quality, innovation, performance. Tempest.
Welcome back, everybody. It's the final session of Oshkosh Live 2024 here at the Redbird Flight booth and in the Redbird Flight studio. And I'm Kaylee Nix, back with it once again for Let's Get Social. And today we're in the booth and we brought some familiar faces from our broadcast this week, and we brought a familiar face in the aviation space here with us. We've got RJ Gritter, accomplished aerobatic pilot. I would venture to call you an influencer because you've got like a couple dozen thousand Instagram followers.
Nice of you. I consider myself a pilot before all that, but I appreciate that.
The videos are amazing, so we're continuing to call it that. And then our fine folks from Middle Tennessee State University, we actually started the week with you guys, Andrew Ottman and Dr. Mark Burns. So again, it's super fitting that we're ending it with y'all too.
Yes, it is. I mean, what a great bookend, right? To a great week. I think you've been doing a fantastic job with the program. This being your debut of Oshkosh Live, it's really been terrific programming, great camera work. Really nicely done.
And if you guys don't know, MTSU has a fantastic journalism program. They're up the street from me in Chattanooga. I say up the street, it's like an hour and a half up in Murfreesboro. But the aviation program with the journalism program makes it a perfect fit for you guys to contribute to this broadcast. So thank you so much for sponsoring this segment, for sponsoring our Going Pro segments, and for just being such a great help this week. We genuinely could not have put on this broadcast without the support from you guys.
Thank you, Kayla. And you mentioned two of our best academic programs, and they mesh so perfectly here at Oshkosh.
Absolutely, and it's a good intersection of both of those. So we got lots of folks to talk about here. We're going to start over with RJ, who, as I mentioned, is one of our aerobatic pilots here. And your videos are stunning. I've got to say, when I watch aerobatics, I'm like, how do you guys keep your bearings when you do that? That's my number one question.
It's a lot of practice,
yeah.
Right? The first time, I distinctly remember the first time I ever spun an airplane, I was completely tumbled, couldn't tell you what way was up. But after you practice enough, do this for hundreds and thousands of hours, you get used to it. You don't even notice that you're upside down. I mean, you kind of feel the forces, and of course you know which way is up, but it doesn't affect you. You're not paying attention to that. You're just focusing on the control movements. And even past that, when the controls become muscle memory, you get to focus on the ground, the crowd, where you want to place the figures, and the minute details of it. So it's just a lot of time spent upside down.
So your pilot story is one that I love getting into people's pilot stories because everybody has one. Typically it happens at a young age and you catch the bug and then you're like, man, I got to keep flying. What was yours and how did that translate into saying, okay, I just want to fly to I want to fly upside down and backwards and sideways and diving and straight up and all that?
Yeah, so mine's a couple of parallel paths. My parents were both pilots and I actually grew up coming to AirVenture. So when I was about that tall, I was out here with them.
It's a common theme, it feels like.
Yeah, it is. It's one of two, right? Either people get into it late or they do it right from the start.
Yeah.
I kind of did right from the start, so I learned to fly from my parents as I was growing up. And then when I was in middle school, I got heavily into radio-controlled airplanes. And I learned aerobatics through RC flying, got really big into competition, and actually traveled to a couple international contests competing with RC aerobatics. All the while, I was studying, got my private pilot's license on my 17th birthday, kind of both in parallel. And of course, grew up going to air shows and watching the show here at AirVenture. And I kind of knew at some point I wanted to combine it all. So after college, I saved up like crazy, got the decathlon, and just said, I want to learn aerobatics, and we'll see what comes after that. Flew it a couple hundred hours a year, learned aerobatics, and that was about 8 years ago. And it's an honor to be at this stage now, performing for the crowd here at AirVenture.
And now you've got shows lined up that I think you had 10 total this year, was that right?
I think we're up to 13 or 14
wow.
at this point. Yeah, it's a busy year.
Busy year for sure.
Yeah.
So I love the RC parallel. RC airplanes were something that I just recently learned about. And when I first learned about it, I thought they were just like, the small ones that are about this big. I watched a YouTube video the other day of there's a celebrity who built an airstrip. I can't remember the celebrity's name now, but he built an airstrip because he flies a model A380.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's insane. Like the wings on that thing, I think it was almost 9 foot.
Oh, it may be double that. It's a huge airplane. Yes.
How do you do that and combine? How do skills translate from RC to regular pilot to acrobatics?
The skills transition amazingly well. For one, growing up building the models, you kind of get that hands-on experience that translates well to helping to maintain and take good care of an airplane. But the flying skills transfer directly over. It's interesting, growing up, looking at the airplane from the outside and kind of getting that perspective, you have to fly the airspeed on, airspeed and power and everything, just the way we do the big airplanes, but you have no instruments. You can't see any of that, and you can't feel it, but you get this sense of what the airplane looks like and how it's behaving, and you get an intuitive sense of the airplane behavior that way. And then so when you jump in the airplane, you kind of have this extra perspective. You can tell what it looks like from the outside. You've pushed models into weird corners of stalled flight and upside down and all this, and somehow it transitions over really well.
So that biofeedback piece is something that is fascinating to me, and as an aerobatic pilot, it's one that you are constantly in tune with because you're genuinely subjecting your body to these crazy G-forces, and I mentioned at the beginning, like, how do you tell which way is up, right? But in reality, what are some of those cues that you're looking for as you're flying that tell you, hey, I'm on the right track, I'm doing what I'm supposed to, and also I'm keeping myself in the place where I need to be, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few special things in aerobatic airplanes. One that you'll see is called a sight gauge. So out, usually on the left wing of the airplane, there's basically some sticks on 45-degree and vertical lines, and we use that to set the lines. So we look out the left wing, pin that point on the horizon, and if we want to fly straight up, we pull until the vertical bar is right on the horizon. That's one of the unique things. We also, reference airspeed and altitude a little bit. But you also just have to know the feel of the airplane. So we get really good at telling, all right, if it's taking this much stick pressure to pull this, and I feel this many Gs, I kind of know that the energy state of the airplane is where it should be, or a little fast or a little slow. So it's a lot of feel, it's a little numbers, and then doing it over and over to the point that you can actually kind of not have to think about the maneuvers you're flying and focus outside the airplane, looking at the runway environment, the box markers, looking at where the crowd is, to position the show right where you want to do it.
It becomes like an extension of yourself.
It absolutely does, yeah.
So you mentioned you fly the decathlon. Tell me a little bit about your plane.
Yeah, so my airplane, it's a 1977 Bellanca-built decathlon, and I bought it just about 8 years ago. It's the airplane I learned aerobatics in, flew my first air shows in, and a couple of years ago, a year ago this time, it was all in pieces. We tore it all apart to rebuild it, restore it from the ground up. and this is its first year back at Oshkosh since then.
And EAA is obviously the biggest aerobatic stage. Do you still get nervous, or is it up there and it's just like second nature now?
At this point, occasionally it happens, but at this point, thankfully, no, once you're in the box, it feels just like another air show. As you're climbing up, and we're kind of in the hold back behind the crowd climbing to altitude, you have a few minutes to look down and look at the campgrounds, look at all the airplanes, and it's, you know where you are, and you get a little bit of nerves at that point. But when the air boss comes on the radio and says, RJ, the box is yours, it's just a practice flight from there on out. We just dive in, do what we've practiced over and over and over, and try to have some fun and make a good show of it.
And for somehow you're grounded while being a couple thousand feet in the air.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm afraid of heights actually, so I like to fly low. It's not too bad.
There we go. That's the best part about it. Well, RJ, don't go anywhere because we will bring it back to you in just a minute. But I do want to turn over to our folks from MTSU because, as you mentioned, you guys have bookended our broadcast here. We started with you during our flying segment on Monday morning. We got to chat with you a little bit during our social piece on Monday afternoon. We got to hear from one of your students who is an aviation sciences major. She should have been a journalism major because she grabbed that stick mic from me, and I learned more about the MTSU program in that probably 3 minutes than I could have ever.
You know, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, listening to RJ, it was really interesting because he clearly has a passion for aviation and what he's doing. And we see that in our students. And that's one reason we love coming here. It really gives them a chance to meet people like RJ, to see professionals, talk to everybody who's here. So it's really great. I love to see young folks excited about what they're going to do, excited about their course of study. That's why we do what we do.
And when she took that mic from you, and it was funny watching your reaction too. You gave her 2 seconds. Is she going to be okay? You just went, hey,
like, she's great.
Hey, girl, go. Yeah, this is fantastic. And like Mark said, it's about the passion. And she wanted to tell that story because MTSU meant so much to her, and she loves connecting with students about the program.
So, as you guys know, you offer distinct subsets of the aviation sector, from sciences to flight school to CFI training, all of the above. Where is there, if there's space, aerobatics? Are you guys going to find a space for aerobatics in there?
He's the provost, chief academic officer.
You know what? If we can get enough students interested, we will.
There you go. Maybe you guys need some like ambassador teachers to come in.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic. There are actually a couple of great collegiate aerobatic teams that travel to the U.S. National Aerobatic Competition every year. There's a collegiate division kind of within that competition. And it's awesome that they come out with that experience.
Okay, well, let's talk after the show. RJ, call me.
Yeah,
let's do it.
MTSU aerobatic team coming your way in 2026. I don't know. I'm not going to make any promises.
Oh, okay.
That's
not get too ambitious.
Yeah, it's all off the record. It's all off the record.
Just broadcasting live.
Absolutely. Well, guys, one of the reasons that we brought you back is to really kind of highlight the people and the why behind EAA Airventure.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, the airplanes are what get us here, but the people and the stories are what keep bringing us back. Talk to us a little bit about your week, about some of the folks you connected with, prospective students, young aviators that have been here for years and years and years. What were some of the highlights for you, Andrew? I'll start with you.
We make a big investment coming to EAA each year, and it's a worthwhile investment because it allows us to really touch base with so many of our alums, industry partners, folks that hire our students, but also just being a part of the world's largest aviation celebration, you know, as one of the top collegiate flight programs. We just feel that the fit is right, and we just want to tell our story. And, you know, Mark, I really loved how we were able to meet with Delta and Southwest. Mm-hmm. And what about that experience we had with the Southwest captain talking to our students directly? That was cool.
Yeah, so we're a part of the Delta Propel program and Southwest Destination 225, which sort of funnels students from their college experience into ultimately flying for them. Yesterday we had a couple of students who came with us to Southwest and had a great opportunity to talk to a longtime Southwest captain, and he just gave them such great advice about the career, how you get to the career.
Fighter planes
That might
are back.
be him now. I don't know.
The fighter planes are back.
So, yeah, actually his son is with the Thunderbirds, right? The captain that we talked to. So, anyway, that's something that EAA Airventure gives us an opportunity to put students in front of those sort of folks.
So one of my favorite things about this week so far has been seeing the spark that people get when they talk to somebody and it automatically makes a connection of an interest, right? And I think for a lot of the folks who are here, maybe it's their first time at EAA or their first big exposure to aviation in this sense, they come for the things that are flashy, like the aerobatics. But then they end up finding something that can be a real avenue into this field, and it's like it catches and then it keeps, right? How do you guys think that there's a space to work together in both of those aspects, where you have the people who are the flashy, the beautiful planes, the really intense maneuvers, the fighter jets that are out there that are just so cool, like they make you feel like this is freedom, you know? How is that connection between the catching and the keeping to the folks in aviation?
Oh, no, it's a great point. I mean, that's one of the biggest benefits of air shows is bringing people into aviation. It's kind of the gateway into that, right? To get them interested. As you say, it's the flashy thing that brings them in. And then even at local air shows, but especially here at AirVenture, they're exposed to all the opportunities that you all can provide to give them a career in that field.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And then you guys are the keepers, you know? You're the keepers and the developers of the next generation. They're there with you for 4 years, hopefully more if they pursue a master's program, an extended program. How are you keeping and then fostering and then making sure like they stay in this for the long haul? There they go.
Somebody is having fun.
Yeah,
He's having a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
We spend a lot of time on retention of students and giving them the academic supports that they need. But aerospace students don't need that quite as much, it seems like, because they have that passion. They know what their career path is going to be. And not that all of our students aren't self-motivated, but the aerospace kids really seem to know what they want. They've got a goal. They're working toward it. So, but it is the real life stuff that's what's exciting to them. And so...
And when they get in one of our DA-40s, Diamond Aircraft 40s, that aircraft sells itself, with that being in our fleet, the mainstay of our fleet. That glass canopy. I love when they come to campus, or they come to EAA and they sit in that cockpit for the very first time, and they go, yeah, I can see myself doing this. This is the plane I want to fly.
So I love that you bring that up, because there's something so special about seeing a plane that makes a personal attachment for it. And I'm looking for this picture because I did not realize that this was going to happen this morning. I am a graduate of the University of Oklahoma, which has a great aviation program. Mm-hmm. I went through their meteorology program, and the link between the meteorology and the aviation is so great. I did not realize that they flew their little Piper. I don't know if you can zoom in on this, but they flew their little Piper up here, and it's on display at the Piper booth. And I took this picture, and it was immediately like, I have this personal connection, and I didn't even realize that it was here until I just took a second to walk and to look around. And that is the ethos of EAA, and that's what brings us together, and that's what keeps us together. And guys, thank you both, or thank you all, for coming here and bookending our show. This was the perfect way to end it, and we appreciate you all so, so much.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us. It's been a great experience.
Absolutely. So just because our show ends here doesn't mean that the air show ends here. We've got three and a half more days. You've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday here at the field. We've got about another half day here at Oshkosh as well. And before we let you go on our live broadcast, I wanted to let you guys know we will be pushing out some more new content tomorrow. We won't be here at the desk, but you'll get to see some of those stories that we didn't quite have time to tell you during the bulk of this week. So make sure that you still stay tuned to all of our social media channels. You can catch us on any of our websites as well, from Flying to Kit Planes, AvWeb, Airline Geeks, Aviation Consumer, and Plane and Pilot. Make sure that you tune in there. You can find all of these videos up on YouTube after the fact as well. One more time before we let you guys go for the week, thank you to Redbird Flight for the beautiful booth space, for helping us out in all of this production. And you know what? I can confidently say we will see you guys at AirVenture 2025. Have a great rest of your week.